All right, let's go ahead and do this again. Welcome, everybody, and we are back. Let's wait for everybody to come back in. We're restarting the week ahead Astro because I had my plumber kept calling me, or a plumber. Welcome back, everybody. We're just gonna restart. I had a plumber kept a plumber working on my car or working on my bathtub is kept calling over and over and over again, and they weren't able to get here, so they wanted to come back, and it's just yeah, so it was a big old mess. I had to answer the phone. So we're just gonna restart the week ahead Astro. How's everybody doing? How's everybody feeling? Welcome back. Thank you guys for being here. So like I was saying when I got cut off, we have a very busy week ahead of us in the stars. Let's wait for everybody to come back. Thank you guys for being here. Excited to go over the astrology of the week with you. Let's see what's on the rising right now. It is currently 12:17 p.m. on the West Coast. Let's take a look and see what's going on. Hello, welcome. Hello. Scorpio's on the rising. Venus, right on my Venus. The rising's at 23 degrees Scorpio, right on my Venus. Very cool. That's why I wanted to start at 12 o'clock, or that's why we've been starting at 12 o'clock. This Virgo season is because 9 a.m. is Libra, which is my eighth house, and it wasn't a vibe. So we've been starting at 12 p.m. this Virgo season because the rising is in Scorpio, which is my ninth house, where I have my Venus and my Sun and my Mercury. So we get better quality lives starting at 12 o'clock. The energy caters to my chart a little bit more. So, all right, let's talk about this week generally, okay? This is going to continue to be a really rough week. It's going to continue to be a little emotional, a little sensitive. It's going to continue to feel very kind of draining or very exhausting in many ways. Um, I think we are going to, there's still going to be this kind of sense of mass hysteria, mass confusion, people feeling very hyper emotional. We just had our lunar eclipse in Pisces, right? A week ago. This is our second week of us going through our lunar eclipse in Pisces cycle. Okay. And Pisces is a very sensitive sign. Pisces is the sign is connected to our emotions, right? It's connected to our faith and our beliefs, right? Because Pisces is ruled by planet Jupiter. And Jupiter's in Cancer, so there's a lot of feelings around what we want to protect, around family, around, what's emotionally important to us, what we're emotionally invested in. Like these are the things that are coming to the surface right now. And we're feeling in some type of way this week that we gotta be on guard, that we gotta protect ourselves, right? What's really interesting this week as well is the moon is going to be going through Cancer and Leo before it goes into Virgo. And on Sunday, we have our solar eclipse in Virgo. That's going to be opposing Saturn. And that's going to be a very, very intense eclipse. Welcome, everybody coming in. Thank you guys for being here. I love you all so much. Look at all your beautiful faces. Hi, Dad. My dad's here. Libra is in the house. I have my Mars in Libra. Libras, Libra men, my karmic lesson. I cannot tell you how I have my South Node in Libra, my Mars there. So Libra men in my life. Oh Lord Jesus. Oh my goodness. Never again, God. Never again. No, I'm kidding. I love me a Libra man. Beaver men are so beautiful. They're so kind. They're so sweet. They can be so generous, but honestly, they are very flirty and they're very indecisive. You think Geminis are indecisive? Have you ever met a Libra man? Libra men are extremely indecisive. They don't know what they want. They don't know who they want. Okay. And many times what's so funny is Libra men there will be people competing for them. Like they have lovers competing for the relationship with them. And this is why, with Libra, love is always a competition. And let me tell you why. Love tends to be a competition for Libra because they have Aries in the seventh house of the partner. So this is why you always see in Libra, also in the fifth house of love, they have Aquarius. So sometimes when Libra actually likes you, they can be a little standoffish or they can play hard to get, especially the women. I've noticed this with Libra women. Libra women can be very, very, if you want me, come get me type of energy because they have Aries in the seventh house. So a Libra woman's gonna sit there and look beautiful, and she's gonna wait for a man, knight in shining armor, to come get her. It has Aries because they have Aries in the seventh, from their sign. So yeah, Libra is a very interesting sign when it comes to love and relationships. Also, Libra men struggle more than Libra women. So it's harder to be a Libra man than it is a Libra woman. And this is because the sun goes into its fall in Libra and Mars goes into its detriment in Libra. So the masculine planets, the sun and Mars, right? The sun and Mars are masculine planets. They are in detriment and in fall in the sign of Libra. So this is why it's just why it's a little bit tougher. It's a little bit rough for a Libra man, for Libra men compared to Libra women. I think certain signs resonate with certain genders more so than others. And you see this also with Virgo. I also believe this with Virgo. I think it's a lot easier for Virgo. I think Virgo women have an easier time dealing with Virgo energy than Virgo men. Like Virgo women could be very bossy and very powerful and very confident and they're like controlling and they're just like powerhouses. And then you get these Virgo men that are all like sensitive and weak and they just get walked all over and take advantage of and they're just they struggle with their self-confidence and stuff. It's really interesting. But you should pay attention to that. We'll definitely say, pay attention to how the signs manifest differently based off of gender. They do. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. It's from my experience as a practicing astrologer. I've noticed how, the signs resonate differently and different bodies, gendered bodies, they resonate with the signs differently. You know what I mean? So I know many times we want to be a little bit more gender neutral, or we don't want to be so gender biased, but the signs are gendered. I don't know what to tell you guys. The earth signs and the water signs are the feminine signs, and the fire and the air signs are the masculine signs. That's how it's written. We want to bypass gender, and I think gender could be really sensitive. I'm a gay man as well, so I totally understand the LGBT struggle, but we want to bypass gender. We want to think that gender is irrelevant, but actually, it really shows up astrologically in people's charts, and it manifests differently based off of people's bodies. It's really interesting, right? That doesn't necessarily mean like I'm not talking about like male, female. I'm not talking about like anatomy. I'm just talking about gender performance, our gender expression as people. These are things that are very complex. These things are very layered. But one of the things you'll notice is that the different gendered bodies or people that associate with different gendered energies, they manifest, the signs differently. And they resonate with the signs differently. Like for instance, it's a lot easier for an Aries, right? Like Aries energy. It's a lot easier for a man to be an Aries than it is for a woman. It's a lot easier for a man to be a Sagittarius than it is a woman. So much easier because you'll notice that, when men have really strong fire signatures, they're confident and they're bold and they're leaders and they're courageous and they're brave. But when a woman has those same energies, there's going to be kind of like a culture. She's going to be culturally frowned upon. She's going to be looked at as being too masculine, too bossy, right? And then she's going to deal with challenges in her life, right? That are going to where it's going to be tough. It's going to be a lot tougher because, she's expected to be soft and sensitive and she's expected to be domestic. And there's all these expectations that we have of man and woman, right? A man or woman, whatever, right? We are expected to play these gendered roles. But then you get these women that are like Aries sun, Leo rising, Gemini moon or Aquarius moon, and they're like bossy in their powerhouses, and it's really hard for them to find their footing in society, right? A lot of times society will frown upon them, and then many of them don't even want and you'll see this also with like Sag, Gemini women, or when women have a lot of fire air in their chart, they don't want to be in a relationship. They don't want to be the domestic one in the relationship, right? Like they end up being the breadwinner in their relationship, and then they end up partnering with men or a partner, right? I don't want to say men, but a partner that's more submissive, that's more passive, that they just walk all over and they boss around. And then the masculine energy, right, ends up actually, or the man, or ends up playing more the domestic role and stuff like that. So it's very interesting to see how we have certain gendered expectations, but when we really honor our chart, we understand our chart, we understand that, you know, we can have a woman that has a very masculine chart and she's the boss and she's gonna have a hard time navigating life because everyone's like, she's challenging these men. Men are, they find her too strong, too confident, too powerful, too self-assured, and she goes into the workplace and it's funny because you always see these women that have these really strong masculine charts, they end up like at the top of like corporations and businesses, and they become entrepreneurs and CEOs. Look at Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart is a clear example of what I'm talking about, okay? And they are surrounded by men. It's funny, they find themselves at the top, right? And then they get into the room where it's just one woman. They're the only woman surrounded by men in these rooms of power and stuff. It's really fascinating to see. But that's why we got to kind of understand how the planets manifest differently based off people's energies and based off people's genders. It's something it's true. It's a real thing. So, all right, well, let's enough about that. Let's kind of talk about the astrology of the week. So we're going to kind of go over it generally, and then we are going to go a little bit deeper into what is it? The nooks and crannies. We're going to go over the moon transits for the week, and we're going to kind of do a day by day play after we talk about the astrology in general. Okay. Someone said, I didn't get that memo. Leo moon and rising with Venus and Mars in Aries, married an Aries man with a Leo Mars and a Scorpio Venus. I need to know this prior. Yeah, see the problem, like when you're a very dominant woman, you have a lot of fire, air in your chart, and then you partner with the man that's very fire, air as well, right? Like you're gonna end up fighting. You guys are gonna end up fighting. You're gonna be going to war with each other. There's gonna be a battle for power. Like you gotta think about it. Leo, she says, Leo moon and a rising with Venus and Mars and Aries, that combination of, that Leo Aries energy, it's kind of like you want to be the boss. You're the queen. Leo's the king, Leo's the queen, Leo's the CEO, Leo's the boss. So, it's better to be with a partner that is going to allow you to lead instead of a partner where you're fighting and battling for authority and power. And we see this a lot of times. You'll see a lot of really strong women. They're like, oh, I want a really strong, dominant man. I want to, and then they get the strong, dominant man and they don't want to submit. You know, they don't, they're like, he wants to boss me around and tell me what to do, and he wants to take away my autonomy and blah blah blah. And then they all of a sudden they're competing with each other. They're fighting with each other. Like it's like everything is an argument. Everything becomes an ego-driven argument. Everything it's like they can't even make a choice or a decision together. It's like what are we doing? And I think sometimes it could just be really hard to be honest with yourself and be like, listen, what do I actually need? And sometimes, we want these partners that are so masculine and so sexy and so handsome. And then they're cheaters, they're liars, they have anger problems, they're combative. You know what I mean? Like when we actually need the nice guy, the sweet guy, the guy that is, he's a little weak, his backbone is a little, isn't as firm, right? Like, and that's actually what you need. That would be better for you, than like getting the strong, masculine, dominant man that you actually don't even want. And because then when you get it, you're like, oh shit, this is actually not what I want. I want someone that is actually going to support me and who's going to work with me and who's going to help me make decisions, but actually let me lead, right? And I think that's another thing where it's kind of confusing when it comes when a woman has a lot of fire air in her chart, and when it comes to love, I think that's where she struggles with the most because she's many times she's pursuing someone that's like a mirror for herself, and then it ends up being messy and ends up being destructive. And she's like, actually, no, and there's that hyper independence. And also, I think that's another thing that we see with air especially fire sign women, more so than air, is another thing that we see is a hyper independence and an unwillingness to let go of power or authority, right? Or just being very combative. And I also think sometimes based on the way our chart is, you're going to be fighting your partner. Like you're going to be you got to find a partner that is able to put up with you, okay? Because if you're someone that has a lot of fire in your chart, let's say you have Mars in your seventh house, you have Mars in the fourth. Let's say you have Mars Venus conjunction or you have Mars Venus in a harsh aspect. You need a partner that's a little resilient. That's also going to be able to kind of go toe to toe with you because you like to fight. I hate to say it, but this is one of the things I've seen, especially when people have Mars in the seventh, Mars in the fourth, or they have Mars Venus together, or even Mars aspecting the moon. You like to fight. You get irritable with people. You have a little bit of an anger problem. You like to fight. You're a little combative. You like a little bit of friction. You like a little bit of tension in your relationship. So it keeps it exciting. It keeps it fun. So you need a partner that has got a little bit of a backbone, got a little bit of grit, you know? Because some of you are like this. I hate to say it, but I've been looking at some of your all charts. I'm like, you like to fight. You like arguing. You're combative. You get irritated with your partner. It's just the way your chart is built. So in knowing that, how can we make sure that we conscientiously choose a partner, okay, that is able to absorb that, that understands that, you know? I see this with my mom and my dad. My mom and dad are like this. They've been together for 35 years and there is not one day that goes by where they are not bickering, where they are not irritating each other in some type of way. And it's like a cycle. Like they get mad, they get irritated at each other, they have a little bit of a moment, and that energy gets released, and then everything's happy and everything's good, and that energy builds up again. And then they get mad, they get angry, and they have a little bit of a moment, and then the energy gets released, and then like they're good, and then it builds up again. It's just like they've been doing this for 35 years. Like, you know, they've been going through this like energetic cycle of like fighting. It's like, and sometimes it's just the way it is. You just got to learn how to live with that, you know? You got to learn how to live with Mars in your relationship sometimes, you know, and how to navigate that energy. They've gotten a lot better though as they've gotten older, but it's just so funny to see this constant cycle. And I hate to say it, but my mom's the perp. I love this woman to death. She's amazing. But my mom has Mars in Cancer, okay, squaring her Mercury in Libra, okay. She has Mars in Cancer squaring her she has Mercury squaring her moon in Capricorn. You know, she's got Mars touching too much in her chart, doing too much. When people have Mars aspecting the moon or aspecting Mercury in a harsh aspect, they're going to be irritable and angry and they're going to go off and they're going to poke a little bit at people and stuff. That's just the way it is. Mars likes to poke, right? So you got to know yourself so well, you got to know your chart so well that you kind of know how you operate in relationships. And you could work on it, obviously, right? Just because you have really tough Mars, Moon, Mars, Venus things, Mars in the seventh, Mars in the fourth. That doesn't mean that you can't control your Mars, but Mars in Cancer is a very difficult placement for Mars. Mars goes into his fall in Cancer, right? Many people, and I've talked about this before, many people that have Mars in Cancer, they get that Mars from growing up around emotionally immature people. They'll have a mother or father that's emotionally immature, that has an anger problem, that goes off all the time. Right? They grow. Right, Mars and Cancer, you got to think about it. Cancers are our childhood, our domestic environment. Cancer is connected to the mother. So many times when we inherit Mars and Cancer, we get it from a mom that's angry, or the woman in the lineage, they have temper problems, and we grow up around a lot of arguing, a lot of fighting, a lot of disagreements. It's a very emotionally charged environment when we have Mars and Cancer. And we inherit that, right? So we can end up doing the same thing, or we could do better than our mother, or better than our family, and actually master our Mars and teach ourselves how to be emotionally regulated, right? How do we emotionally regulate ourselves? If we're mad or angry, we don't just go off impulsively and just, you know, hurt someone's feelings and hurt our own feelings and at the same time, because that's what Mars and Cancer does. Mars and Cancer likes to hurt other people's feelings, and then they hurt their own feelings in hurting the people that they love's feelings, and then they cry afterwards. Like it's the craziest thing, and then they feel bad and guilty. I listen, my brother has Mars and Cancer, my mom has Mars and Cancer, and it's a cycle with them, and I see it all the time. They get mad, they get angry about something, you know, it ends up hurting their stomach. They get all, you know, emotionally charged, they go off, they get angry, and then afterwards they're crying about it. And they feel bad about it and then they want to apologize. It's like the cycle of people who have Mars and Cancer, the emotional cycle of people who have Mars and Cancer, you know? So if you know that about yourself, if you know that you are a Martian, you got a afflicted your Mars is doing a lot in your chart, right? Or you're a heavy Mars person, then you got to know how to navigate that. You got to know how to, you got to know how to regulate your emotions. You got to teach yourself how to do that, you know? You don't get all emotionally distraught when something doesn't go your way or throw a tantrum. Mars in Cancer is my temper tantrum Mars. That's what I call it, the temper tantrum Mars. Because when I've noticed that when people have Mars in Cancer, it really depends, on where it's at. But when people have Mars in Cancer, they could just throw a tantrum, no matter how old they are. All right, let's talk about the astrology of the week. Okay, let's talk about the astrology of the week. Okay. All right. So this is I think it's our last week of Virgo season. Am I correct in that? This is our last week in Virgo season. We wrap up this week. We wrap up Virgo season with our solar eclipse in Virgo that's on Sunday, which is going to be, yeah, it's our last week of Virgo season. Woo, what a Virgo season this was, right? Yeah, on Sunday, we have our solar eclipse in Virgo that's going to be opposing Saturn. This is a new moon, so this is our second new moon. We had a new moon in Virgo. What would it be now? 3 weeks ago? We had our new moon in Virgo 3 weeks ago. What was it? I think it was like, don't quote me on it, but I think it was like August, maybe the 22nd to the 23rd, I believe, that we had our new moon. So this is our second new moon in Virgo, okay? But this new moon is very different because it is a solar eclipse, right? And it's also opposing Saturn. So the first new moon in Virgo that we had in the beginning of Virgo season was a little bit more about setting foundations, was a little bit easier, was a little bit more just like initiating us into the Virgo energy, right? But that's going to be this week, this solar eclipse in Virgo new moon that's opposing Saturn is going to be very intense. It's going to be a little rough, my loves, and it's going to be really sad. I also think what's so interesting because someone brought this up. Um, Saturn in Pisces at 28 degrees opposite the new moon. We actually have a funeral. Charlie Kirk's funerals on Sunday, on the day of the eclipse. And Saturn is a planet of death. Saturn is also the planet of funerals. So Saturn rules the graveyard. So what's interesting is how we have this big public funeral that is going to be happening on Sunday that's politically charged as we have an eclipse that is opposing Saturn, right? So it's really interesting because Saturn's the planet of endings. Saturn's the planet of death. Saturn, like I was saying, is funerals and graveyards. And Saturn is also legacy and commemoration. So what Saturn rules over like our life after we die, like our legacy, like how are we going to be remembered? How is time going to remember us? Saturn's a planet that rules time. So how is time going to remember us? Are we going to, go down in history? And what are we going to go down in history for? And I think it's really interesting how, Saturn and Pisces opposing the solar eclipse in Virgo, there's going to be different narratives or different stories around, Charlie Kirk's legacy. Some people are like, wow, this man was a God-fearing man and he was doing the Lord's work and he was such a good person and he was right, like going out there and standing up for what he believed in. And there's other people that are like, this guy was a terrible person. He was evil. He was spewing hatred and vitriol and he had no morals, no ethics, and it's just total blasphemy that this man is being honored or commemorated when he just lived his life in a very hateful, spiteful way. He built his entire career on a platform of hatred, of bigotry, of misogyny, of sexism, of racism, just the worst, okay? Like, and there's other people that are in that, right? So it's really interesting how mutable signs are about duality. Mutable signs are about, there's this and then there's this as well. And it's interesting how we have these two narratives, these two stories about who this man was it's very politically charged and they're at odds with each other, right? But one of the things I want you guys to understand, okay, we need to be very careful with extremism in any type of way. We don't want to be too extreme in one direction. The malefic planets, Saturn and Mars are known to be extreme in nature, where the more moderate, so this is what differentiates benefic planets or optimist or good planets like um, Moon, Jupiter, Venus, and also the malefic planet, Saturn, Mars. What differentiates them is extremism. Okay. So, traditionally speaking, when we're talking about the benefic planets or the good planets, Moon, Venus, Jupiter, they tend to be more moderate in nature. And moderation or like walking the middle ground or not being too extreme in either way is a very benefic it's a benefic planetary thing, right? So that has a lot to do with, Jupiter, Venus, and the moon. Where being extreme in nature, taking things to the extreme, whether it be our beliefs, whether it be our actions, whether it be our choices, that's like a Saturn and Mars thing, right? Like, what is the most extreme Mars thing that you can do? Murder someone, kill someone, act of violence, right? Mars rules over guns. Mars rules over blood. Mars is connected to murder. Mars is the planet that murders, right? And Saturn is a planet that constricts, that causes loss, that causes deprivation. But Saturn causes suffering in a different way. So what's when we're talking about the malefics, we're talking about Saturn and Mars and the way that they inflict pain. They do it very differently. Mars is about instantaneous, get it over, shooting, guns, violence, like very quick, right? Like shooting someone, that's a Mars thing. Where Saturn is the planet of torture. Saturn rules time. So Saturn is like, I'm gonna make you suffer and I'm gonna make you suffer over a long period of time. This is why Saturn rules prisons. Because what happens when you go to jail? You get put in jail for a fixed amount of time, right? 10 years, 15 years, 20 years for life. Some people are there for life. So Saturn kind of sits, he makes you suffer by kind of sitting in it, right? And this is why Saturn is connected to more like, torture because you don't know when the torture is going to end, right? Saturn is just going to it's the energy of suffering over time or causing punishment over time. That's a Saturn thing. Where Mars is instantaneous. Mars is like the electric chair and stuff like that, right? So when we're thinking about these planets, I just want you guys to understand, you know, what's the difference between Saturn and Mars, and how do we make sense of, or what's the difference between Saturn and Mars and the benefic planets, Jupiter and Venus? And the Moon and Mercury are also considered benefic, but Saturn and Mars are the primary malefic planets or negative planets, or they're known as the evil planets, right? When we're trying to contextualize, we're trying to understand the difficult, hard, tragic things that are happening in the world, we're going to look to Saturn and Mars. We're going to look to also the nodes, the North Node and the South Node, which are responsible for the eclipses, right? North Node is in Pisces, South Node is in Virgo. The nodes in Vedic Hindu astrology are also considered malefic. They bring negative things or bad things, or they could bring good things, but there tends to be some kind of karmic attachment to it, or there'll be some kind of caveat. There can be a shadowy caveat associated with what they could bring, right? The South Node is more of a positive. The South Node can be positive. K2 can be positive because the South Node has a lot to do with detachment and surrender and letting things go for the purpose of spiritual enlightenment, for the purpose of releasing oneself from karma, which is the South Node, right? The North Node brings success, brings worldly success, brings money, brings fame. The North Node is also very desire driven, right? So the North Node can be about a lot of sex, a lot of money, a lot of drugs, a lot of anything, right? But there tends to be some kind of consequence for that. You can get a lot of success when it comes to the North Node, right? And we see this a lot. Like, for instance, who was born on an eclipse that I always talk about? Donald Trump. Okay. Donald Trump has the North Node on the Sun and Uranus, okay, in Gemini, in his 11th house, because he's a Leo rising. And then he has the South Node on the Moon in Sagittarius, in the fifth house. So we can see how that North Node Sun Uranus on Donald Trump's, right, North Node Sun Uranus conjunction in Donald Trump's 11th house, it's brought him mass fame. It's brought him mass success. It's brought him tons of power, tons of influence. But look at the way it's manifesting, though. It's not pure. It doesn't feel good. Like he has to carry a big burden. Like his success, the position that he finds himself in as president of the United States, it's very demanding. It demands a lot of energy. And it's like it's like this energy that just doesn't stop. It keeps going, keeps going. It's kind of like it's like a train or a train that's lost its, control over its direction. And it's just like, pummeling down the railroad in a very dangerous way. And it's going to crash at some point. That's what the North Node can do, right? So when we're learning about the planets and when we're learning about how, these the North Node, the South Node, Saturn, Mars, which are malefic, how they manifest. We want to understand, you know, we want to understand why they're malefic, like what makes them malefic. Well, the one of the big things that makes them malefic is extremity, being extreme, taking things too far, right? And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing in so many ways right now. We're seeing a, we're in here in the States and even across the world, we're seeing politicians or leaders taking things too far when it comes to their leadership, when it comes to their policies, when it comes to their beliefs, right? We're seeing a lot of extremism in general politically. And it's like, when is it going to stop? What is the breaking point? And I think that's what a lot of us are going to be asking ourselves, like here, especially if you're in the States, and this is one of the things I've been thinking about, like, what is our breaking point? What is going to be our breaking point as a people to where we're going to like stand up and be like, no, this is where we put our foot down. This is where we say no, you know? And I think that's what the invitation is going to be. That's what the call to action is going to be. That's what the big question is going to be as we continue to pummel down this, very dangerous timeline politically here in the States. Like, what is going to be our breaking point? And when are we going to set our foot down and say no? And what is that going to look like, So, but my loves, listen, Uranus and Gemini, last time Uranus was in Gemini, we had our civil war, right? So, we're in that Uranus just dipping his toes into Gemini. Uranus is only at 1 degree Gemini, going retrograde back into Taurus, but then he's going to go back into Gemini next year. And we're already seeing conversation around, or we're seeing, messaging around civil war. We were seeing all the right wing, the extreme right wing politicians using terminology around civil. They're using the word civil war. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. We're seeing it on national television. It's crazy, right? But this is the time. Like this is what the energies are pushing us towards. Like this is what's meant to manifest, right? This is part of this karmic narrative, this karmic story, to where, things need to evolve and things need to change, and we just need to be really honest with that and really open to that truth, that in order for things to change, we need to go through these growing pains, right? So someone said the government is trying to be, they've been at war with us. If you're here in the States, our government has been at war with us. I mean, take a look at everything, the guns in the schools, the defunding of education, just how our education system has gone into the dumps. Healthcare, the culture of healthcare in the States, like they're just so the food. Oh my God, the toxic food and how they don't want to pass any legislation to protect us from harmful chemicals in our food. There's just so many things. We've been under attack as a populace, right? The jobs, all the layoffs, like, the defunding of Social Security. We're like, they're just so, it's too, when you look at it, if you were to draw it all out or write it all out and you look at it on this big, it's overwhelming on how many fronts our government is attacking us on. It's overwhelming. It's too much, right? It's food, it's insurance, it's education, it's money, it's work. It's like everything. It's on every front, right? And especially in what's even crazy is like it's not even if you're a person of color. If you're a person of color, if you're an LGBT person, if you're from a minority population, you feel it more. But it's like we're like it's even happening with those that are considered privileged. You know what I mean? They're even getting the shaft. They're even getting attacked in some way, by the government. So it's crazy. It's just crazy to see. But I think one of the beautiful things about us moving out of Pisces energy is especially when Saturn gets out of Pisces and the nodes are done going through Pisces and Virgo, people are going to be very clear, or there's going to be a lot of focus or a lot of information, or there's going to be a lot of clarity around who's the real enemy. And I think one of the interesting things right now that we have happening is seeing how There's certain people like Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens who are kind of separating themselves from the GOP. We have this Groyper thing where the Groypers are declaring war on the GOP on Donald Trump's, campaign. And so we're kind of we're gonna continue to see how Trump and his people's like their group is gonna get smaller and smaller and smaller, and the rest of us, those of us that have been left out, right? Like we're gonna band together, and I even think we're gonna see more of like we're going to see more of these conservatives that are very confused about their beliefs, or they're having to pick and choose all these different battles and what they agree on, what they don't agree on. I think we're going to see more conservatives in general kind of falling away and kind of seeing the truth or seeing the reality of the situation for what it is. But we need to be patient because it's really everything's going to kind of like come into focus or be more clear politically and stuff next year. Okay, next year. Saturn in Pisces, the North Node in Pisces, Pisces confuses things. Pisces has us, make decisions or choices that are more emotionally informed, or even, our beliefs are more informed by our feelings, about our emotions, and we're easily gaslighted when there's Pisces energy in the air. But as, the nodes go into Aquarius and Leo, and as Saturn goes into Aries next year, we're done with this Pisces energy and we're gonna have Jupiter in Leo next year, right? I feel like there's gonna be so much more clarity, and people are gonna be very, okay, this is who the enemy is, Right now, we're not sure, and the elites are trying to pin the liberals as the enemy or as the conservatives as the enemy, right? Like, there's a lot of this political bifurcation happening where, like, we're seeing like what is liberal and what is conservative being pulled apart, and there's like more extremism from both sides. But that's all a distraction. And that's one of the things I want you guys to understand. They are trying to put us against each other to distract from what they're doing at the top. The true enemy is at the top. The true enemy is the one percenters. The true enemy is Donald Trump and all his friends. The true enemy is Epstein. The true enemy is, I don't care if I get a little bit of, political pushback for this, but the true enemy is Israel. Okay, and how Israel has bought out this motherfucking country, how Israel has bought out the presidency, how Israel has bought out. It's weird to me. I don't know how that it's the weirdest thing to me. The weirdest thing to me was watching, okay, both the right and the left, both Congress people from the right and the left standing up and clapping for the leader of Israel when he came here to visit Congress. That was so weird. What is Israel doing for you guys? What is Israel doing for our country? I don't get it. I don't understand it. Am I missing something? What the fuck is going on? I'm confused. Why are our politicians celebrating and supporting Israel while they're committing genocide in Palestine? It doesn't make no fucking sense to me. What is the invested interest? I just, I gotta know. We need this information. We need to know, how are all these politicians and how are these people in power? What is Israel doing for them? Like what is that connection? To me, this is what I feel, is what I believe. I think it comes back to banking. I think the truth of the matter is that I think the Jewish folk, I think they own Hollywood. I think they own our country. I think they own the banks. They own, like, Chase and JP Morgan. And I think they own everything. That's what I feel like. Behind closed doors, they own everything. And the reason why our politicians of today are just like catering to them and just like, laying out the red carpet for them is because of that. Because of the fact that behind closed doors, they have influence and power and control. That's what I feel. I truly believe this. And we need the receipts. We need the information. We need to see the fucking bank transfers. We need the Epstein files. You know what I mean? We need to see, what is it? What is it? What is this connection? You see what I'm saying? Because it's like, so we can't get too caught up in the liberal conservative conversation, my loves. We can't just go, and be like, oh my God, all the conservatives are evil and all the liberals are evil. We have to stay away from involving ourselves and participating in this like political extremism that all it does is create divisiveness, and all it does is distract us from the true enemy. Okay? We gotta be discerning, my loves. Okay? I studied Israel, Palestine, and politics at university. Weapons sales to the USA have always been in the billions. Sales to Israel from the US. Yeah, so exactly, right? Because the United States profits off of the United States is a militaristic country. The United States profits off of selling its weapons and selling its, war technology to countries. That's the truth. Yeah, that's very true. Thank you for sharing that. So let me go ahead and get off of my let me get off of my pedestal, okay? My political pedestal. I'm leaving that back. I left that back. I left that behind in my college days. Let's talk about the astrology, okay? Let's talk about the astrology of the week. So we have a few things happening this week. We have Mercury going into Libra. So Mercury's going to move into Libra on Thursday, September 18th. And Mercury's going to be in Libra from the 18th of September until October 6th, okay? We also have Venus moving into Virgo on Friday, and she'll be in Virgo from Friday, September 19th until Monday, October 13th. Okay. So, with Venus and Mercury changing signs, we're gonna see some like shift or change of energy this week. Mercury in Libra is about achieving balance and fairness. Libra is a very neutral sign for Mercury. Actually, Mercury does pretty good in the sign of Libra. Yeah, Mercury does pretty good in the sign of Libra, because he does have what we call shared triplicity rulership. So, Libra trines Gemini, Mercury rules over Gemini. So when Mercury's in an air sign, he tends to be pretty good, but tends to do pretty well. But there's definitely going to be this, we're talking Mercury about justice, Libra, about fairness, about balance, right? We've had Mars transiting Libra, which has made things very difficult or very challenging. We've been feeling this need to assert ourselves and fight for justice and fight for equality. And, it's that Mars in Libra has been maybe for some people, especially if you're a cardinal sign, if you're a Cancer, Capricorn, Aries, Libra, maybe the Mars in Libra has been causing some kind of tension or friction in your relationships, especially if you have Venus, your rising, or your moon in a cardinal sign in Aries, Capricorn, Cancer, or Libra. Maybe the Mars in Libra has been causing conflict in your life in some type of way. Even if you have, yeah, even if you have your Mars in a cardinal sign. I know a few people that have Mars in Cancer and they've been going through things because of the Mars in Libra. Well, now Mars is moving well, I'm sorry, I'm talking about Mars. Mars will be moving into Scorpio next week, and we're going to talk about that next week, okay? Mars goes into Scorpio and he's going to actually square Pluto in Aquarius. And so Mars going to Scorpio is going to be intense. We have a 29-degree Mars on the day of the eclipse, Mars at 29 degrees Libra. And then the following day, he goes into Scorpio and he makes that square to Uranus. So, Mars's transit is something that's going to be very interesting over the next, few months and over the next upcoming weeks, but we'll talk about that. But with Mars leaving Libra and Mercury going into Libra, this is about finding more balance. This is about finding more fairness. This is about having these peacekeeping conversations. If you are a cardinal sign and you have, Libra, Libra, Capricorn, Cancer, Aries in your chart, Mercury in general should bring some good peacekeeping, should bring some conversations. If you've had fallouts with people of the past or disagreements with, friends, lovers, whatever, that Mercury in Libra will probably be an invitation to go ahead and find that balance and harmony back in your relationships. I think air signs and fire signs are going to benefit the most from Mercury in Libra, and cardinal signs are going to be the most activated, right? Especially if you have a cardinal sun, moon, or rising, because Mercury is going to be either conjoining you, opposing you, or squaring you. Okay. So, but there's definitely going to be a call to justice, a call to balance and fairness, and yeah. What's interesting about Mercury in Libra as well is as Mercury moves into Libra, he's going to trine Uranus and he's going to trine Pluto. And there's going to be a grand trine with Uranus, Pluto, and Mercury in Libra. So I think the interesting thing about that is what we may even see this week is more protests. Mercury goes into Libra on Thursday. Yeah. Oh, so this weekend. Yeah, Mercury's going to be at those early degrees of Libra this weekend, going into our eclipse. So I'm really feel like there's going to be a lot of protests. I feel like there's going to be a lot of, people taking to the streets, people walking out on jobs or people walking out in the workplace, and seeing more labor movement, seeing more students as well. I think one of the things that Uranus and Gemini does, Gemini is on the axis, or your Gemini is on the axis of with Sagittarius. So, your Gemini rules students, okay? And Sagittarius rules like college kids, and professors and stuff like that, right? So I think what's really interesting about Uranus and Gemini is we're seeing students take to the streets, or we're seeing professors, we're seeing, educational institutions kind of paving the way or leading the way in some type of way when it comes to the protests and stuff like that. Okay. And then with the Pluto and Aquarius, Aquarius is also the sign of rebellion, right? Pluto is the planet of transformation. And what's interesting about Aquarius is the sign connected to our teenage years. So it's like this mobilization of teenagers. And we can also see how this energy has that Pluto and Aquarius, Uranus and Gemini manifested in Nepal, right? Because who were the ones leading the revolution in Nepal? It was the Gen Zers. It was the millennials and the Gen Zers, right? They went ahead and elected an interim prime minister on Discord. It was led by the youth, the Gen Z protesters, are the ones that spoke out against corruptions and set everything on fire. So I think it's so interesting how, Uranus and Gemini, Pluto and Aquarius, how that trine between them right now, there's like a mobilization and activization, a mobilization, and what is it? Activation. Sorry, guys. Sorry, y'all. My words today are a little, I don't, my words today are doing something. Um, Activation of the youth when it comes to rebellion and, making change and stuff like that. So Mercury and Libra, we're probably gonna see that this weekend as well. I would not be surprised if there's people that show up at, Charlie Kirk's funeral and they're like actively protesting, or there's some kind of dramatic moment of protest or something at his funeral or something. So we'll talk about that when we go by day play, okay? So yeah, so Mercury and Libra. The other planet that's changing signs this week is Venus. So Venus has been in Leo. It feels like she's been in Leo for a while. But Venus goes into Virgo. So one of the things about Venus and Virgo, she does go into her fall in Virgo. And I am a little concerned about Venus's transit in Virgo over the next, so she's going to go into Virgo on September 19th until October 13th. I'm a little concerned about Venus and Virgo only because she's co-present with the South Node, and Venus has a lot to do with the beauty industry. Venus has a lot to do with food, the food industry. Venus also has a lot to do with like finances and like the financial industry. So Venus, what industries is she connected to? Okay. Beauty, fashion, okay. Food, okay. Also the law, like the legal industry, lawyers and things like that, the justice system, that's Venus. And there was another one that in the finance industry, so like banking and finances and stuff like that, okay. I'm a little worried about all those industries with Venus going into Virgo and going through the South Node over the next few weeks. Because I feel like those industries are going to take a hit in some type of way, or those industries are going to suffer, or we're going to see some layoffs associated with those Venusian industries. So let me repeat myself. So it's going to be around food, the food industry. It's going to be around maybe even the health industry because it is Venus and Virgo and it's the South Node in Virgo. It's also going to be around like the legal system and like lawyers and like the legal industry. Also the beauty, I think I said that, the beauty industry, and then also the money, financial industry. So I'm a little worried about, Venus going through Virgo in the South Node because not only is she in her fall, but she is co-present with the South Node and having to go through the South Node. So, we're gonna continue to see job losses, my loves. I just got to be honest with you. We're gonna continue to see job losses and businesses closing and businesses going bankrupt and businesses merging and things like this. It's gonna be a theme, and that's just where we're at right now. Okay. So, also. One of the things about so Venus and Virgo does activate the mutable signs though. So one of the things I do like about Venus and Virgo is if you are a mutable sign, Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, Sagittarius, Venus in Virgo is going to ask you about where you stand in your relationships. You may see some new connections, new relationships come in with Venus going into Virgo, especially if you're an earth sign or a water sign. So, because the water signs, they have earth signs in houses 3, 7, and 11, which activates their social life. So, water signs, Venus and Virgo could be activating your social life, your love life, or your romantic life in some type of way. And also earth signs. Earth signs, you guys can meet someone, especially if you have your sun, moon, or your rising. Well, mostly like I don't consider the sun like a big relational planet or a big indicator of something that's going to happen with your love life. It depends on your chart, but in generally, the sun is we don't look to the sun for that. We look more to the moon, Venus, and the rising when it comes to relationship transits or like meeting people. Venus, moon, and the rising sign have way more to do with our love life and our relationship life than the sun. The sun is not really concerned with our love life. Okay, the sun is more concerned. Unless you're Aquarius rising and you have Leo in the seventh house, then it's a little bit different for you, right? But not for everybody. The sun is generally an indicator of our purpose in life, our joy in life, our career, like how we're here to shine, how we're here to glow, what kind of impact we're gonna leave, on society. The sun and Saturn have everything to do with that. So, okay, so yeah, so Venus and Virgo, it's going to be a little bit of an activation for mutable signs. If you have your sun, moon, or rising in a mutable sign, um, because Venus is going to either be sitting in a conjunction with you. If you have Virgo placements, it's going to be opposing you if you have Pisces placements, and it's going to be squaring you if you have Sag or Gemini placements. But for water signs and earth signs in general, though, right, Venus is going to be sextiling you, trining you. It's going to be opposing you, conjoining you, but it's going to be more of like a positive thing, all right, for you guys. So, but Venus is fallen in Virgo. Why is Venus fallen in Virgo? Because when Venus is in Virgo, she forgets her self-worth. She struggles with her value. She struggles with money and finances, right? Like Venus and Virgo, Virgo is a sign of servitude, is a sign of work and having to do work that is very compassionate or possibly self-sacrificial or where you're healing someone, right? Because Virgo opposes Pisces. So what we get with Virgo energy a lot of times is we get this kind of like humbleness and we get this kindness and we get this, oh, it's okay. You don't have to really pay me full price. You can just give me whatever you have in your pockets. Like that's a very Venus and Virgo thing. So we just want to be very aware of, our relationship with Venus as she goes into Virgo this week because Venus in Virgo may reveal some of your insecurities, may reveal some of the ways that you don't value or appreciate yourself. Maybe Venus in Virgo can reveal how you're not charging enough for your work or for your services, or maybe Venus in Virgo can even reveal to you how you don't feel valued or appreciated, Virgo, and Venus and Virgo at your job, Virgo, South Node, Virgo rules our jobs and our day-to-day routines and stuff. So and also just in general with relationships, you may become aware of during Venus and Virgo's transit, or Venus's transit through Virgo, you may become aware of in some way how you don't feel valued or appreciated in a relationship. And it may be something that's like really shown to you very clearly in some type of way. Okay. But we'll talk more about Venus and Virgo as she's transiting through the sign of Virgo. But it is a weak place for Venus. All right. It is a weak place for Venus in general. Also, people that I think of who have Venus and Virgo, Venus has a lot to do with it's interesting. It depends on where it's at in your chart, but Venus has a lot to do with your likability, your style, your fashion, your beauty, your looks, and also kind of how people see you socially. So Venus has everything to do with social grace and social expectations. Okay. So Venus, right? She has a lot to do with social standards. that people and society hold us to. So Venus, like for instance, when you go and do like fine dining, right? It's a very Libra thing. It's a very Venus thing. You have to hold your fork a certain way. You're expected to have manners. You're expected to, behave a certain way. Like Venus expects us to behave in a socially appropriate way. So what happens is when we see Venus in Virgo, when Venus is in Virgo, we get people that get socially judged, socially criticized, socially ostracized, or they get like critiqued in some type of way where they are not living up to society's standard of beauty, standard of behavior, standard of self-expression. And I see this with Meghan Merkel. Yes. Oh my gosh, she brought her up. Yes, she brought. It's so Pisces rising. Mrs. Armstrong is a Pisces rising like myself, and listen. Those of you Pisces risings, Marissa's another one. You guys need to get out of my brain. Stop it, okay? Stop reading my thoughts. It's not okay. All right. I was on a live a few days ago, and I was talking about some things, and Marissa was on here. She's a Pisces rising as well. She's an eighth house moon in Libra. I was like, get out of my life, Marissa. Stop it. You guys be reading my thoughts, okay? Stop it. But yeah, Meghan Merkel, she has Venus in Virgo. And so what's so interesting about Meghan, right? We can see how she's been criticized, she's been judged, she hasn't been socially accepted, right? Like Meghan, she's really that Venus in Virgo has really done a number on her. It's been really hard for her to assert her beauty, assert her values, right? Even the way she looks in the public eye, it's really interesting because when women have a weak Venus, or when people have a weak Venus, their public reputation or their public image, it like comes under attack repeatedly and they're unfairly judged. Yeah, Kim Kardashian as well. She's also, yep, she's another one. Yeah, and Kim has Venus and Virgo in her 10th house of career because she's a Sag rising. So we see how the fallen Venus not only manifests like in our individual lived experience, but also socially. Because Venus is about our contact with society in a lot of ways. Venus has a lot to do with, the way that we interact with society and also kind of like being socially accepted, socially celebrated, right? And so I want you to think of Venus as like when you go to a party, because parties are very Venusian. And when you go to like a really high end party, you're expected to dress a certain way, right? It's like, who invited you here, right? Like, as the higher you get on the food chain, the more rigid the Venusian expectations are for you to be socially accepted, right? If you're going to go to like a high fashion show, you're going to be expected to wear certain things to be included. If you're not socially graceful, if you don't have the beauty, the looks, if you don't have the fashion sense, then you're going to be socially ostracized. People are going to judge you and look at you, give you a side eye like, what is that bitch doing here? What are you doing here with those rags on, right? And so that's one of the things that we can experience with Venus and Virgo. That can be the shadow of Venus and Virgo is being unfairly judged, unfairly ostracized, and also having strained relationships with women. This is a very interesting thing. This is one of the things that is very overlooked by everyday astrologers. Like you guys need to be very careful with who you're going to for readings. Some of y'all, you tell me in a reading, oh my God, I went to this person and they they had no idea what they were talking about. Okay, like do your research before you get readings from people. Okay, go look at their reviews and make sure that they actually know what the fuck they're talking about. All right, because I don't know, some of y'all be telling me the horror stories when it comes to getting readings. But one of the things with Venus, right, and this is so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I literally saw a post a few months ago that was like, oh, Venus in detriment or Venus in fall doesn't matter. It does. Actually, it very much does. Because when Venus is debilitated in a woman's chart, she's going to struggle with relationships with women. She's going to have very difficult relationships with women. I see this with Venus in Scorpio. I see this with Venus in Virgo. I also see this with Venus in Aries, where like when women have these Venus placements, the relationship with women, they always get betrayed. They always get taken advantage of. There's a woman who's jealous of them. There's a woman who's Venus in Aries. There's a woman who's competing with them. Like, it's a very, very much, yeah, Venus in the eighth house is very similar energy. Yeah. like being betrayed by women, taken advantage of by women, women that are jealous or envious of you. That's a Venus in the eighth house type of thing for sure. Venus in the 12th as well, same thing. Venus in the 12th, you know. And many times with Venus, it'll be your own sister or your own mom that you get it, they experience it with first. The first point of contact with that malefic Venus or with that challenged Venus, I won't say malefic, but with that challenged Venus or that Venus that's struggling, the first woman that you deal with that BS is usually from the mother or from sisters. That's usually where it comes from first, right? And then we see it manifest in all these other different types of ways. So it's just something to think about, you know. And also so let's talk. I want to talk about this from the perspective of a man or a man's chart. Okay, when a man has a weak Venus or a Venus in detriment, Venus in fall, or Venus in the eighth, Venus in the 12th, he is going to struggle with his relationships with women, and it can manifest in a lot of different ways. It can manifest as him taking advantage of them, him not respecting them, him feeling like he has more power over them. There can also be very rigid expectations that he has of women based on his Venus placement, and he can also have trauma associated with women based on his Venus placement. So if a man has a weak or debilitated Venus or troubled Venus, his relationship with his mother was probably bad or terrible or was tense or conflicting in some type of way or even sad and tragic. It's a possibility. Or even with his sisters, right? He could have had sisters that were, or even aunts, uncles, but there's some kind of woundedness or some kind of difficulty or some kind of challenge with relationships with women generally. And I have Venus in Scorpio, and I've seen this in my own life. I have Venus in Scorpio and the moon in Capricorn. So I have the moon and Venus in their detriment. So listen, my relationship, I used to get bullied when I was when I was in elementary school and when I was in middle school. I there were women that would bully me. I used to get bullied. It was like it happened like 3 or 4 times that I got bullied by girls when I was growing up. And it's because my mom is a bully. My mom was the first bully, was my first bully, you know. We've come a long way, you know, we've healed that. But my mom was, my first my mom is very dominant, very controlling, very bossy, and she's kind of mean, you know. That was my first, but it's interesting because I also saw how that manifested in my social life at school. Why are all these women bossing me around and being mean to me? Well, I have a moon in Capricorn and I have Venus in Scorpio, so there it is. Right? So it's good to be aware of this because when you have planets in fall or detriment, they're going to externalize themselves as they're going to externalize themselves as the people around you. And this is one of the things that we people really don't understand. Like Western astrologers, they don't get it. Many don't get it. They don't understand how energies in our charts manifest outwards and they get mirrored and they externalize themselves in the people and we that we experience, you know? And so when a man has a wounded Venus, there can be a lot of things that manifest. You know, he could take advantage of women, he can have a hard time committing, especially when a man has Venus in Aries um, or Venus in Virgo, got some mutable Venus, he can have a really hard time committing and staying in relationships, right? Or he could be very wishy-washy. It's one of the things I think about with Venus, and even Venus in Pisces. When I see a man have a mutable Venus, right away, flirt, inconsistent, talking to 2 or 3 people at a time, a lack of stability or lack of commitment with mutable Venuses sometimes, especially when a man has a mutable Venus. I think when a man has Venus in Gemini or Venus in Sag, I think those are very challenging Venuses for a man to have. I think when he has a Venus there, he needs a woman that's able to keep up and keep him engaged and keep him entertained. Because I feel like when a man has a Venus that is like in Sag or Gemini, if she's not able to keep up with him, he's just gonna move on. He's like, I mean, he's just moving on. He's doing the next thing. He's like, okay, right? They're very unstable. These are very unstable placements for Venus, you know? Aqua Venus is the worst. Yeah. Well, the thing with the man when a man has a Saturn ruled Venus, Venus in Capricorn or Venus in Aquarius, there can be kind of like a coldness. There can be a little bit of a disconnect from women, right? Or even him seeing women as like outside of him in some type of way, or him feeling at odds with women, right? And things like that. Also, it's really interesting when a man has Venus and Aquarius, he typically likes women that are out of his. Sometimes the sometimes the challenges of the placement are not actually about the internal experience or the relationship experience of the person, and but it's actually more about how society responds to that relationship. Let me explain. So when someone has Venus in Aquarius, right, they're usually, not usually, but they will have a tendency to date people that are outside of their ethnicity, outside of their race, outside of their culture in some type of way. So when people have Venus in Aquarius, I especially notice this with Moon, Venus, and Aquarius, Aquarius risings. Um, they'll date, they'll be in interracial relationships, or they'll be in like these very, or they'll be with someone that's from a different religion in some type of way. But the hardship of that Venus placement doesn't manifest in the relationship. It actually manifests in how society responds to their interracial relationship, or responds to their you know different religion relationship, right? Like, one's Catholic. So what you'll see with Venus and Aquarius is it's the hardship can be about how the family doesn't accept the partner, how society or the culture is looking at y'all like, why are you guys two different people being together? Like that is not correct, or that's not appropriate, right? So that is like what we see more with Venus and Aquarius. I think that can be what's difficult about Venus and Aquarius. So sometimes the Venus placement is not necessarily about our, individual one-on-one experience in the relationship or how we're experiencing it within us, but it's more about how society responds to our relationship, right? Like how society is like, wait a minute, you're a black man with a white woman, and what is all that? What does that come with, right? All the baggage that comes with that, right? Like, or like even like in the gay community, oh, you're a black man with a white man, like what does that mean, right? Like so there can be a lot of kind of like, because Aquarius is here to defy expectations. Aquarius is here to push the boundaries of what we consider normal. And so we can see how that Venus and Aquarius can manifest in that type of way, where the relationships you engage in the end of themselves, right, are societally deemed inappropriate for different reasons. You see what I'm saying? Things like that. Also, Capricorn, I think Venus and Capricorn is more about like age gaps or age dynamics. And this is kind of like one of the things I see with, I think Venus and Aquarius and Venus and Capricorn could also be like relationships where there's a lot of age, where there's a big age gap. And that's also that could be, blasphemous, or that could be considered problematic, right? Or there will be people that frown upon that. Like, oh, what are you doing dating someone who's 20 years older than you, 30 years older than you, right? Like that could also be a Venus and Aquarius, Venus and Capricorn thing, kind of age gap relationships and stuff like that. And then the blowback that comes with it, like the baggage that comes with being in an age gapped relationship, right? So these are food for thought. These are ways that, these Venus placements can manifest, and these are kind of karmic ways that they can bring hardship, right? And stuff like that. Yeah. So it's food for thought. Okay. Beauty with age, yeah. Yeah, timeless beauty is a Venus. When Venus is aspected by Saturn, people don't, or Venus in Capricorn, Venus in Aquarius, or even when Venus is aspected by Saturn, especially positively, like when someone has Saturn trine Venus, or when someone has Saturn. I think, do you know who has Saturn trine Venus? I think Princess Diana has that. Let me take a look real quick. Princess Di. I think she has Saturn trine Venus. It's like timeless beauty, or beauty that doesn't age when you have Saturn and Venus in a good aspect with each other. Let me look at her chart really quick. And then we're gonna dive into the play-by-play for the week. Oh, she does. Yep, she has Saturn. I'd be this memory. I can't remember what I ate yesterday, but when it comes to astrology and charts, I'd be on it. So she has Saturn in Capricorn, trine Venus in Taurus. That's what Princess Di has. She has Venus in Capricorn, trine Venus in Taurus. So when that Saturn Venus trine, when Venus is in also like Aquarius or Capricorn, there can be like very elegant, very refined beauty, beauty that is timeless, or even as we get older, we don't age, we get more beautiful as we age. It can be similar with Venus trine. It's different with Venus trine Jupiter, though. It's different with Venus trine Jupiter. Venus trine Saturn and Venus trine Jupiter are very, very different because Saturn and Venus have a relationship with each other. They like each other. They're friends because Capricorn and Taurus trine each other, Aquarius and Libra trine each other, right? So Saturn and Venus, when it comes to the signs that they rule, they actually trine each other, which is a harmonious aspect on the astrological wheel. Where Venus trine Jupiter it's I think it's even better. I think Venus trine Jupiter is a really good aspect to have, but we're gonna get more cultural influence. So one of the things you'll see with Venus trine Jupiter, Venus trine Saturn is gonna be more serious, elegant clothing, high-end, refined clothing. But Venus trine Jupiter gives me more cultured variation. We're more concerned about expressing beauty in a way that's culturally informed. So what you may see with someone that has Venus trine Jupiter, depending on the culture that they love, they may take, Indian dress or Indian beauty standards to the extreme or to the max, right? Or they may take, American beauty and American standards or whatever that is, that fashion sense, they may take that to the max or the extreme in some type of way. Or they may even be open to mixing different cultures, right? Because Jupiter is a planet that has a lot to do with foreign cultures, and it's a very internet. It has a lot to do with the mixing of international cultures and the mixing of, international things. So I'm thinking about Venus trine Jupiter being more like, oh yeah, like my shoes are made in Peru, but my hat was made in England, and this vest is made in whatever, whatever. It's more like that. That's what I kind of get. Where I feel like Venus trine Saturn would be more rigid and stuff. Venus opposite Saturn is very rough. That is a very, very difficult. Any squares or oppositions between Venus and Saturn are difficult. That's going to be elegant beauty as well, and refined beauty, but that's going to come with a whole nother host of challenges if you have Venus and a harsh aspect with Saturn. Harsh aspects, like when Saturn is squaring or opposing a planet, it's always there's going to be some kind of burden, some kind of karmic burden, some kind of hardship. You're going to struggle, you're going to suffer when it comes to love. If a woman has Venus opposite Saturn, she's going to struggle with hormones. She's going to struggle with her beauty. She's going to struggle with self-esteem and self-worth. She's going to struggle with her relationships with women. She's going to feel rejected sometimes. She's going to go through relationships where control is a big theme, right? Dealing with partners that are very controlling or very dominant, age gap relationships that end up with karmic consequences, dating men that are just like their dad because the father, it's just so many things. It's going to show up in a lot of different ways. And if you have questions about your particular chart, you want me to break down certain aspects for you, like the way I'm doing now, you can always book a reading, and I would love to do that for you, okay? Because that's one of the things I am brilliant at I'm really good at breaking down your chart and helping you understand all the different complex ways that one aspect is going to manifest. Saturn opposite Venus is going to be multiple things in your life. It's going to show up so many different ways, right? It's going to show up at work. It's going to show up with your sisters. It's going to show up with your health. It's going to show up with your self-worth. It's going to show up with beauty. It's so many different ways, right? And I think that's one of the things that we always got to remember is we can't just isolate our aspects, our placements to this means one thing. No, it means a multitude of things, but flushing it out, right? Flushing out the multitude of meaning that we get from our aspects is something that we should do. It's because it's not just going to mean one thing. It's going to mean multi, and then there's going to be different. Even as you live, as you go through your lived experience, there's also going to be different manifestations of that thing and the way that those aspects manifest, right? Or that aspect manifests. So, okay, all right. We talked about Venus and Virgo. That was a whole thing about Venus. We're talking about Venus and Virgo. And we talked about Mercury going into Libra. So Venus goes into Virgo this week. Mercury goes into Libra this week. Mars will be going to Scorpio next week. So we're not going to talk about Mars and Scorpio, but we will get there next week. And what else do we have going on? And then we have our solar eclipse in Virgo on Sunday, right? So let's break down the play by play. Let's kind of go day by day and let's, track the moon and talk about the transit of the moon. And if there's anything else that comes up, I will address it. Okay. But this is going to be a very sensitive week. It's going to be a very challenging week. I can't reinforce this enough. One of the reasons why this week is very emotionally challenging, or people are feeling very angry, or people feeling very wounded in some type of way, or people are feeling like this desire to call out injustice based off what hurts right now, is because Mars is in Libra, opposing Chiron and Aries all week. All week. We have Mars opposite Chiron and Aries. We have Mars and Libra opposite Chiron and Aries all week, all week. So we need to be very aware of this Mars Chiron opposition that's going to be in the sky all week. Okay, because that is a very, very triggering aspect. Mars and Libra opposite Chiron and Aries, we feel like we're angry, we're mad, we're hurt, we're wounded, we want to address some kind of injustice, we want to call someone out on our bullshit, on their bullshit, we want to fight, we want to argue, right? Like there's that Mars opposite Chiron is a very, very triggering aspect in the sky this week. And I just think we need to be very, very aware of this aspect in the sky, okay? Especially tomorrow on uh, September 16th, because the moon tomorrow is going to actually be making a T square with Mars and Libra and Chiron and Aries. So the moon's going to square Mars, square Chiron. It's going to be in Cancer, a very emotional sign. So we just got to be very aware, specifically tomorrow. Okay, I think tomorrow is going to be a very triggering time emotionally, you know. And so, but yeah, we need to be very aware. Like Mars is at, okay, so we start off the week. Okay, let's kind of dive in. We start off the week today. Let me go and fix my timing here. I'm gonna share my screen. So if you guys go and watch this back on YouTube, you'll actually be able to follow along because I'm gonna go ahead and actually share my screen here so that those watching back on YouTube can see what I'm looking at. Alrighty, there we go. Cool. All right. Let me do this. Okay, there we go. Cool. Let me see what people are saying. Hold on. I was getting caught up, but I'm minding my business the rest of the week. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. You feel this? Someone said, "Oh Lord." Oh, oops, I did not mean to put that filter on. Hold on. How did I do that? Oh, let me get this filter off. There we go. Okay. Um, so that's why my Aunt Flo arrived today. She knows. When you're doing that course too, woo, I'll get there, my love. Listen, I'm really working. So the South Node in Virgo and these Pisces Virgo eclipses, the nodes are going through my first house, my rising, and my seventh house because my Pisces rising and Saturn's gone back into my rising. So I'm working on my health, y'all. I am working on my body. I'm working on my digestive system. I'm working on my health. I need to get my body and my health right before I can expand and grow. This is one of the things that, because I've been trying to figure out am I just feeling so blocked? Why have I been finding it so hard or so difficult for me to expand and grow? And even when I do that, why do I just like end up crashing out at some point or feeling burnt out? Well, it's because I gotta work on my health and my body. That's why. And that's what Saturn and the North Node are showing me right now. So I just gotta listen and, and honor that and respect that, It's like if you aren't feeling good within yourself, if you don't have a healthy foundation of self, like if your health isn't good, if your mind isn't good, right? Don't expect yourself to go out in the world and like build and achieve and stuff, right? It's like the focus is in here. The focus is on this. And then eventually, when you feel solid and good and healthy within yourself, you'll be able to go out in the world and achieve and do what it is that you're here to do, right? But you got to figure out yourself first. You got to figure out your health, your body first. And this is what Virgo season is about, right? We've had the South Node, the Sun, and Mercury in Virgo, right? Virgo is like, the foundation of your life is your day-to-day routine, is your health, is your habits. That's the foundation of your life. Everything else is built upon that. You build your 10th house upon the 6th house, right? And the second house, your food, your diet, your relationship with money, your saving, your spend. This house is 2, 6, and 10, right? 2 and 6 are your foundation houses, though. All right. The second house is your financial foundation, your material foundation. The sixth house is your daily foundation, the foundation of health, your habits, your routines, your job, right? Your day-to-day job, your day-to-day work. That's a foundational part of your life, the sixth house. You got to get those together before you can do your 10th. You will, if you don't have your second house figured out, if you don't have your sixth house figured out, if those areas of your life are things that you struggle with, how are you going to go ahead and do your 10th house? You just can't. You're always going to be brought back. You're going to burn out. You're going to run out of money, whatever it may be, right? You're going to get sick. You're going to get ill. And so just something to keep in mind is Virgo season. I do think that these eclipses in Virgo and Pisces and, this Virgo season is like, you got to take care of yourself. You got to detox that liver and that colon. You got to get right with that lung health. You got to get right with that diet. You got to be moving your body. You got to take care of yourself, right? Like, we cannot expect this society and this culture and this political system and this medical system that we're existing in now, especially if you're here in the States, you can't expect it to take care of you. You can't expect to go to the doctor and for them to give you a good, clear diagnosis. Not right now. The whole culture of medicine and hospitals and all that ish here in the States is bad right now. Very, very bad right now. I was just talking to, who was I talking to? Was it a client? Oh, I was talking to a friend. I was talking to a friend who told me a horror story about, they went through a miscarriage and the fetus was like sitting within them, like becoming toxic and calcified. And the doctor kept sending them home over and over and over. Oh, just nothing's wrong with you, nothing's wrong. And they were all sick and all ill and blah, 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 blah. And right until they were like, no, you're gonna give me an ultrasound, you're gonna take a look. I'm sick, there's something wrong with me, right? And they finally, right, forced the doctor to take a look at them and they realized, oh my God, there's this, there's this thing in you that's poisonous and we got to get it out, right? Like they're borderline septic. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to take care of yourself. We're in this really weird, place right now here in the States where you cannot expect this country to take care of you. You can't expect a doctor to know what's wrong with you, right? It's at this point, it's not even Western medicine anymore. It's just like, you know, the medical industry has just become a corporate force. It's become a for-profit industry that has no invested interest in your healthcare and your well-being. It's the truth, my loves. I hate to say it, but unless there's some people that are very lucky, they're very blessed, or you may be very privileged where you can afford a good doctor, or you have a doctor that knows what the hell they're doing, or you live in an area where there's still good medical care and stuff like that, but the majority of us, I don't know, y'all, it's getting weird out here. So let this we have a solar eclipse in Virgo coming up. Like we're wrapping up Virgo season this week. Let this be a reminder to you that you are your best advocate, you are your best agent, and it's your responsibility to take care of yourself and keep yourself healthy, right? We live in a very unhealthy time and place right now. There's toxicity everywhere, whether it be in social media, whether it be the food, whether it be sugar, whether it be, just you go out in the world and there's toxins and pollutants, whether it be the water is toxic. Like there's just so many things that are very toxic and unhealthy. And we just need to be very aware of what we're putting in our bodies, what we're digesting mentally, emotionally, physically, right? And we got to take care of ourselves. We got to take that upon ourselves right now because we are living in a system that if you do get sick or you do get ill, it could be very dangerous. You know what I mean? I just I gotta give you guys a heads up. We gotta be realistic with what we're going through right now. You know what I mean? All right. Anyways, let's talk about the planets. Let's talk about the astrology of the week. So let's kind of dive into the play-by-play for the week, okay? So today and tomorrow, Monday, September 15th, and Tuesday, September 16th, the moon is going through the sign of Cancer. Alrighty. I'm looking at 12 p.m. on both days, 12 p.m. Pacific time, and I'm noticing that the moon is today. What's the moon aspecting? The moon is making an aspect to Nothing actually. The moon's just kind of floating, doing its own thing today. So the moon in Cancer today and tomorrow, though, this is a beautiful time with the moon in Cancer to really come home to yourself, to nurture yourself. There's a lot going on in the outside world, and the moon in Cancer calls us to be at home, to be with family, to be with our kids, to be with the people that really matter to us, and to really take care of ourselves emotionally, all right? This is a very emotionally charged time. With the moon in Cancer, people are feeling a little bit more sensitive, feeling a little bit more triggered, right? The moon in Cancer makes a sign-based square to Mars in Libra. So we just got to be very aware of, how we're dealing with our emotions today and tomorrow, what we're doing with our emotions, okay? Whether or not we want to throw them at somebody, you want to throw some rage or some anger or some irritation at somebody, that's going to be more of a likelihood tomorrow because the moon's going to square Mars actually tomorrow. But we just want to be very aware of our emotional environment. This is a great day, or these are some great days to create something. Cancer is a very creative sign. So whether it be art, whether it be music, it's a good day. These are good days to listen to music, to do any kind of production of music, anything like that. That's like a moon and Cancer thing. Um, but I think in general, themes around family, things around home, things around domesticity. Also, cooking yourself a good home cooked meal or something, that could be a good thing to do, a good practice while the moon is in Cancer. This is also very activating for cardinal signs. So today and tomorrow, if you are a Cancer, Libra, a Aries, or a Capricorn, the moon is going to be aspecting you, especially if your rising is there, if you have a cardinal rising. So just be very aware of today and tomorrow. There could be some very significant things that happen or that move in your life or something, okay? Tomorrow, what I love about tomorrow though, tomorrow I think is gonna feel really good. It's gonna maybe be a little bit of we're feeling good. There's a lot of expansion, there's growth, maybe there's opportunity, maybe there's luck, but then there's also some kind of conflict or some kind of tension. So tomorrow the moon actually hits Jupiter in Cancer. And I love that. Honestly, I love the moon in Cancer transit. I love the moon going and hitting Jupiter. We had our lunar eclipse in Pisces. So Cancer is the fifth house or fifth sign away from Pisces. So with Jupiter there and the moon there, we might actually see some really cool announcements today and tomorrow from people. So we might see people announcing that they're pregnant or that they're getting married or that they're engaged. We also might see some good fortune, some good luck, some good opportunity as the moon and Jupiter come into conjunction tomorrow on Tuesday the 16th, because Jupiter is the planet of expansion and growth. Jupiter is the planet of luck. Like Jupiter wants to bring something new in, and Jupiter is in his exalted state in the sign of Cancer, right? He does really well in Cancer. And so I'm kind of feeling that with the moon conjoining Jupiter tomorrow, there may be some good news. There may be something positive that we experience. We can get a gift. Also, Jupiter usually has a lot to do with interactions with people that are, in a higher moral, ethical position or that have some kind of wisdom or knowledge. So, Moon Jupiter tomorrow could also be about a very important conversation with a therapist, with a coach, with a leader, with a boss, or even visiting grandparents, hanging out with a grandmother, grandfather, because Jupiter is also connected to grandmothers and grandfathers. So tomorrow's kind of feeling good. It's looking good. What I will say though, Jupiter tends to expand whatever the moon is doing, or Jupiter just expands and makes things larger. So with the moon and Jupiter tomorrow, there may be some expansion or growth around whatever emotions that we're feeling. And then what's also really interesting is as the moon separates from a conjunction with Jupiter tomorrow, this is going to happen around morning time, I believe, is when they actually conjoin. Let me see. It's gonna be 6 a.m. in the morning. They're both at 20 degrees Cancer. Um, so actually, yeah, so it's gonna be all day tomorrow. But what happens is as the moon separates from Jupiter by 3 p.m. tomorrow, Pacific time on September 16th, the moon's gonna square Mars in Libra. So and the Jupiter has a lot to do with our beliefs, right? And not our values, but more so our beliefs, our morals, our ethics. Like Jupiter has a lot to do with our own personal sense of what is right and what is wrong, like our own personal sense of this is good or this is what's morally good or like this is bad or this is negative or whatever, right? That's what Jupiter is about. So with Moon Jupiter tomorrow and then Moon moving past Jupiter and squaring Mars, I'm sorry, in Libra by 3 p.m., we may feel very emotionally charged and emotionally aggressive, and we may want to, call out some kind of injustice, or we may be triggered, with someone that has opposing beliefs of opposing beliefs from our own. So we just want to be aware of, expansive, overinflated emotions, especially with Moon square Mars, emotions that are like rooted in anger, rooted in rage, rooted in hurting or harming others. We just want to be very aware of this with Moon square Mars tomorrow, because that can be us feeling very emotionally irritated. We want to go, and address some kind of injustice. We want to fight for something. And if it's that moment for you, and if that's like if you find if a moment of conflict comes to find you where you have to defend or protect yourself, it is what it is, right? But we just want to be very aware and very intentional of how we're navigating our emotional environment while the moon is in Cancer today, tomorrow, especially tomorrow when the moon hits Jupiter and squares Mars in Libra. Okay. Mars in Libra is what? That's the eighth house away from Pisces. Yeah, so that's why we got the death of a man. You know, we had a lunar eclipse in Pisces. If you put Pisces on the ascendant in the eighth house, you get Libra. So Pisces rising has Libra in the eighth house. That's where Mars is transiting, right? So what did we get during this lunar eclipse cycle? We got the death of a man because Mars is connected to men. Mars rules men. Okay. So eighth house is death, right? So, and he was a Libra, which is crazy. So we got the death of a Libra man during a lunar eclipse in Pisces cycle because Mars is in Libra in the eighth house from the lunar eclipse in Pisces. We put Pisces on the rising. Does that make sense? Um, but yeah, so Moon Jupiter tomorrow squaring Mars. Okay, we just want to be very aware of that. Also, I will say, I think in general, there can be woundedness with money and finances. So tomorrow there can be a moment of tension or conflict when it comes to money and finances in some type of way, where it's like you owe me money, this person owes me money, I gotta pay this person back, or I'm taking this person to court because they owe me money. There's something like that. That can be a narrative for some people tomorrow. Okay. But the fifth house energy, there's with Jupiter and Moon together, there's a focus on our roles as parents. There's a focus on babies and on our children. And we're eating ice cream today and tomorrow at the Moon in Cancer. We're doing things that make us feel good because we've been feeling a little stressed and we've been feeling a little tense. The astrology's been a little rough. Okay, the astrology's been a little rough. Okay, so whatever makes you feel good today and tomorrow with the Moon in Cancer. Okay. So then the moon goes into Leo. Lord Jesus, and we got more people being born with the Leo moon. All right, okay. Oh, Leo's my sixth house. So me and Leo energy sometimes. No, I love Leos. I love Leo energy. My dad's a Leo. All right, let's keep going. Let me take a look. I made pancakes and ate them in bed today. LOL, my daughter and I are sitting on the bed eating ice cream listening. That's fun. Well, you know why? It's because, Cancer rules the bedroom. Cancer rules the bed. Cancer rules our home. And Cancer also rules milk and ice cream and dairy. So if you feel like you have a craving for some dairy and milk, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Yesterday, as the moon went into Cancer, I ended up getting some cheesecake. I cheated actually because I'm not eating no dairy and no ice cream. But I was like, I'm craving cheesecake. So I ordered myself a slice of $16 cheesecake yesterday. I could have gotten a whole cake, but I ended up getting myself a $16 slice of cheesecake from this really bougie bakery yesterday as the moon went into Cancer. That's so funny how you brought that up. But yeah, Cancer rules milk and dairy and ice cream. So that's why I said that. You're a Cancer son as well. She is too. Oh yeah, you guys love yourself some ice cream. I had ice cream today. Yeah, ice cream is a Cancer thing. Ice cream is ruled by the sign of Cancer. So and I didn't even finish that slice of cheesecake. I was like, Louis, I can't do it. Like I haven't eaten any dairy in the last few weeks because I've been working on my diet. So just that one little, like, I just ate half of it and my stomach was all. I was like, okay, I'm only gonna eat half of this. I'm gonna finish the rest of this I'm gonna save it for tomorrow because clearly my stomach is like, what is this? We're not doing dairy. What happened, buddy? My stomach was like, I'm not in agreement with this cheesecake that you're putting into me. But, you know. All right, so the moon goes into Leo on Wednesday. So I'm looking at, hold on here. Let's go to here. Yeah, it's like right at like midnight, Tuesday midnight going into Wednesday morning, September 17th, the moon goes into Leo. And we kind of get a little bit, it kind of gets a little dramatic with the moon in Leo. Okay. Things get dramatic with the moon in Leo. All right. So as the moon ingresses into Leo, it opposes Pluto. It sextiles Uranus, who's retrograde in Gemini. It trines Neptune in Aries. And what else is it doing? Okay, sextile Uranus and Gemini. Trine Neptune and Aries. Yeah, Neptune and Aries. Opposite Pluto and Aquarius. Okay, so I'm kind of feeling like Wednesday morning, like Wednesday, like that day. I think it's a dramatic day. This is also the day that it's like Mars. Does Mars go into an opposition like firmly? Mars is at 26 degrees Libra on Wednesday, opposite Chiron and Aries. Let me see when Mars goes to 20. Oh, Mars, yeah. So Mars hits 26 degrees of Libra, opposing Chiron and Aries at 26 degrees on Wednesday at the same time that the moon goes into Leo and opposes Pluto in Aquarius, and then is also aspecting Uranus and Neptune. So I kind of feel like Wednesday is a very dramatic day when it comes to politics, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to the drama that's unfolding this eclipse season. Kind of feels like Wednesday is very, very dramatic. It also feels like, with the moon shifting into Leo, leaders, bosses, authority figures, our children, especially our teenage children, take center stage. Um, and yeah, Venus is at 27 degrees Leo. She's trining. So Venus is also trining Chiron and Aries. So I'm kind of feeling like we're kind of feeling a little triggered. Some of us, we want, with the moon in Leo, we want attention. We want to celebrate something. The moon in Leo is generally a transit of like fun and excitement and like self-expression and us feeling more confident and us kind of like being outside. The Cancer is a very inside energy and Leo's very outside, but it's kind of coming up against, certain transits that are also very difficult and very hard. I think the moon opposite Pluto can be a few things on Wednesday. I think it could be us getting information that was secret or hidden or unknown within our own individual life, but maybe also in a very public way. So, what we might see is we might get some hidden secret information or some new information, about, the assassination, about Trump, about what's going on with like, the Epstein files and whatever. I kind of feel like the moon opposite Pluto wants to divulge information. It wants to reveal something. Pluto wants to tell us something. Pluto wants to expose something. Pluto wants to dig something up. Okay. Um, yeah, but we can also, with the moon, right, opposing Pluto and Aquarius, there could also be a moment where there's some kind of like traumatic experience, or there's kind of like something that we got to like talk about that we're emotionally invested in that could be really tough or really difficult, especially if you're a fixed sign. So if you have anything at the early degrees of a fixed sign of Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, or Taurus, I want you to pay attention to Wednesday, especially like in the morning, because that Moon Pluto opposition could move a narrative forward in your life. I have early degree Sun, Mercury, and Scorpio, and I've been feeling the Pluto and Aquarius very strongly. And I've noticed that when the moon goes through a fixed sign, especially early degrees, and it squares that Pluto, that tends to be a deep moment of revelation and epiphany for me. And there tends to be something that gets revealed to me that kind of calls me to do shadow work in some type of way. So I think moon opposite Pluto on Wednesday, it's a great day for investigation. It's a great day for polygraphs and lie detectors. It's a good day to, you know, ask or seek hidden information and for obtaining that information in some type of way. Okay. But yeah, moon opposite Pluto, you know, moments of deception, moments of betrayal, espionage. We get those kind of words or that kind of language when we're talking about Pluto. Okay. We just want to be very aware of this. It doesn't have to be bad though, because this could also be a beautiful moment of transformation or reconciliation for some people. There could be a moment of like Moon and Leo opposite Pluto and Aquarius. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm transforming. Look at all the beauty that's coming from this transformation I'm going through. Look at all this life, this new life that's being birthed, right? Or that's coming in or something. So it doesn't have to be a harsh thing, but it can just be a defining moment in some type of way. So I just want you guys to be very aware of this. Moon touching Uranus, moon touching Neptune, we may be feeling very erratic, we may be feeling very chaotic, we may be feeling, expressive and creative this day. I think Leo is a very, very creative sign, and with the moon in Leo, the good way to express this energy is by dancing, hanging out with your children, doing something fun, doing something self-expressive. Maybe even like for those of you that are working on, you're working on your self-worth, self-confidence stuff, or you don't feel very confident about your creative expression, about your art, about your music, about your talents or whatever, maybe with the moon in Leo, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, maybe it's time to take the stage. Maybe it's time to practice. Maybe it's time to put your work or put your creativity on display in some type of way to get more attention, right? Or so you can start getting comfortable with the idea of getting attention or being seen, right? And stuff like that. So, Leo wants to be seen. Leo wants to be recognized. Leo wants to be celebrated. Leo's ruled by the sun. It's the brightest planet in our solar system, right? Or it's of the main seven planets, or even of the 10 planets, right? Leo, the sun is the biggest planet. When the sun is out and during daytime, every other planet disappears. We don't see any other planet, right? When the sun is out, okay? Other than the moon sometimes. Sometimes you can see the moon, but in general, the other planets, they disappear. So when we're thinking about that with the moon in Leo, a need to celebrate something, we want recognition, we want attention, we want, to put something on display, we want to be seen. We may be feeling like you know, we want to let something out in some type of way, we want to talk about something, address something with the moon in Leo. But yeah, if you're a fixed sign, Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, or Scorpio, I want you to pay attention to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, okay? Those days can be very important for you in some type of way. So that's Wednesday, the moon in Leo. And then we keep going. So let's keep going here. Let's go by 6 hour increments here. That Mars Chiron opposition on Wednesday. Oh, Lordy. I just feel like people are very emotionally triggered and people are feeling very angry on this day. With the moon in Leo, Leo's a fire sign. Leo's a very passionate sign, and Mars in Libra opposing Chiron, that Mars Chiron opposition exacts on Wednesday. So I just feel like it's a very, very tense, very frustrating or very irritable, a very combative Moon and Leo transit, I think, because of that Mars Chiron opposition. Also, Sun and Mercury are getting to the end degrees. So another thing, oh my gosh, I don't even know why I didn't talk about this, but I want to talk about this. So what's also happening on these days, like we're gonna feel it. It goes exact on Wednesday. Mercury's opposite Saturn. Everybody coming in, welcome. Thank you guys for being here. We're on Wednesday, September 17th. We're talking about the moon in Leo right now. And I was just mentioning Mars and Libra opposite Chiron and Aries and how that opposition goes exact on Wednesday. But also, also on Wednesday, Mercury in Virgo goes to 28 degrees and opposes Saturn in Pisces at 28 degrees. Who's retrograde? And the Mercury Saturn opposition, that's like a hard stop. That's like the depression and the heaviness and the negativity of Saturn opposing Mercury. Anxiety, Mercury and Virgo, anxiety, overthinking, criticism, overanalysis. I think Wednesday is kind of a rough day, to be honest with you guys. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think Wednesday's a rough day because of the oppositions. Moon opposite Pluto, Chiron opposite Mars, Saturn opposite Mercury. We got Mars and Saturn in oppositions on Wednesday. And to me, that is like we're feeling a little depressed. We're feeling a little sad. We're feeling very heavy. We're feeling indecisive. I also think Mercury opposite Saturn on Wednesday, there's going to be some announcements around getting fired or getting laid off or people losing a job in some type of way or us feeling some kind of bad news or even getting some messaging from the government possibly that's kind of sad or something or we get like a bad outcome in some type of way. Hold on, give me a quick second. Hey, what are you doing? What's going on here? Hmm? What's going on? My dog has just been like scratching and licking, and he's just like doing all the most to himself over there. Just want to check in on him. Get my tea real quick. So I want us to be very aware of Mercury opposing Saturn this week. Um, it exacts on Wednesday, but there's a buildup happening with Mercury opposite Saturn and the Sun opposite Saturn. Okay. And especially if you have any mutable signs at the late degrees. So if you have any mutable placements at the last degrees of a mutable sign, so if you have anything at the last degrees of Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, or Sagittarius, if you have anything in the last 5 degrees, I want you to be very aware of this kind of like Sun Saturn, the Sun Mercury Saturn opposition. So Sun Mercury in Virgo opposing Saturn in Pisces. Be very aware of this kind of opposition, okay? Because there might be some mental challenges, Mercury opposite Saturn, that we're dealing with. We may have, the shadows of depression or negativity or self-doubt or even like failure complexes can get triggered with Mercury opposite Saturn. Okay. Someone asked, so if we have early degrees in fixed signs, yes, I was saying that with the moon and going into Leo on Wednesday because the moon in Leo opposing Pluto and Aquarius is hitting that moon in Leo opposing Pluto and Aquarius is hitting fixed signs, early degree fixed signs, right? But this, what I'm talking about now, the Mercury opposite Saturn, okay, on Wednesday, this is a mutable sign thing, right? Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, Sagittarius. So that Mercury Saturn opposition can be like a hard stop on something. So I want you guys to be very aware of this. There could be some kind of cancellations that day. There could be delays that day. Something we can have, the internet could go down. There can be some kind of communication difficulty or something like that. Late degree is like 25 degrees to 29 degrees. That's late degree. So if you have anything in the last degrees of a mutable sign, I want you to be very aware of this because this can hit you directly, but this can just be something that we experience in general. There could be some kind of outage, there could be some kind of loss, there could be something that is sad or heavy, there could be someone you might get news, Mercury, that someone passed away, Saturn, Mercury opposite Saturn, something like that. So we just want to be very aware of this as Mercury hits this opposition with Saturn because it's going to be in the air. And, Mercury and Saturn opposite each other. Actually know someone that has that in their birth chart. Actually know someone who has Mercury and Virgo opposite Saturn and Pisces. And that is a very challenging opposition to have. It's because there's, what may even be revealed to you is something around like, something around like boundaries, something around perfectionism, something around, it's got to be the best. And it's just like preventing you or blocking you from like moving forward in some type of way, right? We got to let go of the shadows of Mercury when Saturn's opposing Mercury in Virgo. We got to let go of perfectionism, everything needing to be the best or, hyper like over analysis and stuff like that. We just want to be very aware of this with Mercury opposite Saturn on Wednesday because this kind of energy, it's gonna kind of, it's gonna kind of bleed into our solar eclipse in Virgo on Sunday. Because then we're gonna have the sun and the moon opposite Saturn and Pisces. But the first opposition that we get with Saturn and Pisces is Mercury, right? Um, Good thing he's not gonna sit there too long though, because Mercury goes into Libra soon after. So Mercury's gonna be going into Libra on, what was it, Thursday? I think I said Thursday or Friday. Thursday, yeah, Thursday. Yes, yes, yes. And then Venus goes into Virgo on Friday, I believe, right? Yes, yes, yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, so we're not gonna sit in it too long, but yeah, it's looking like Wednesday's a little rough, okay? Mercury opposite Saturn. Cancellations, delays, setbacks, hardship, difficulty, self-criticism, self-doubt, you know, a hard stop, some kind of rejection, some kind of denial. I don't know why I'm seeing a lot of people losing their job on Wednesday. I'm seeing people getting laid off. I'm seeing a mass layoff on Wednesday or something. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Look out for that information or what's in the news on Wednesday, okay? Because Moon's opposite Pluto, Mars is opposite Chiron, and Mercury's opposite Saturn on Wednesday, okay? So it's looking a little rough, okay? It's looking a little rough. That day is looking very tense. Okay, Mercury opposite Saturn things. Good news. Okay, let's talk about the good news of Mercury opposite Saturn, okay? That could be about a new contract. That could be about a new lease agreement, a new job contract, a decision or a choice that you make on that day that's gonna impact the future in some type of way, right? It doesn't have to be bad. Mercury and Saturn can also be about some kind of karmic agreement or some kind of contractual agreement, or we could even end up signing some papers that day, right? Some government papers, some new job papers, some legal papers. There could be something around that with Mercury opposite Saturn on Wednesday. Okay. So yeah, that could be some good stuff. Also, that would be a good day for like blueprinting and planning with that Mercury Saturn opposition. But I don't know, the moon's in Leo, so there's a lot of, I feel like we're feeling pushed and pulled on Wednesday with these aspects that are manifesting, or these aspects in the sky on Wednesday. All right, let's keep going. So, the moon's progressing in Leo. Let's go to the next day. Yeah, so then on Thursday, Mercury moves into Libra. But Mercury right away opposes Neptune in Aries as it. Someone asked, "Do you keep notes when personal things happen under transits?" Yeah, I do. I take note for myself. A lot of it is mostly mental. It's not like something that I'll record, but when something happens, I will note it astrologically, and then it tends to kind of just like stick in my brain. But I don't like. I have a weak Mercury. Okay, I don't have Virgo placements. I have Chiron and Gemini. I have no Gemini. I have no Virgo in my chart. I only have Chiron and Gemini, and I have Mercury retrograde and it's conjunct the sun in Scorpio. So I'm not writing anything. Okay, I'm not journaling. I'm not taking notes of things no, I'm not doing it. I'm not built that way. I know this. Okay, if I am gonna do that, I'm gonna have to cultivate that. I'm gonna have to work really hard to do that, but it's just not my energetic makeup. It's not the way I was made. Therefore, I don't do those things. But what I will do is when something big or something intense happens, I will note it and I'll take a look at my chart. And I actually will post it. I'll share that with you guys when I go through things or when something happened. Like when I got in a car accident, you know? Or not when I got in a car accident, but when a car hit me with my parked car. So during that messy Mercury retrograde that we had, that was in Leo. That was such a messy Mercury retrograde. Oh Lord Jesus. That messy Mercury retrograde we had, I was sixth house because I have Leo in the sixth house. I was gonna take my dog to the vet, Mercury retrograde in the sixth house, and then I went out to my car and someone ended up running into my car when it was parked and my whole front bumper was hanging off, And that was Mars at that time. Where was Mars at? Was Mars in Virgo at the time? I think Mars was in Virgo. Or maybe I was going through my Mars return. I don't remember. But all I know is Mars was messing with me at that time, during that Mercury retrograde. That's all I know. So yeah. All right, let's keep going. So On Thursday, September 18th, 2025, I'm looking at 12 p.m. Pacific time. We have the moon at 20 degrees Leo, and the moon is going on that day, on Thursday, the moon, it trines Chiron and it sextiles Mars on this day. And I think this day is activating that Mars Chiron opposition a little bit more than with the previous day, Wednesday, because now the moon has something to say, the moon's involved. And so I think that, there's going to be a continuation of this kind of like drama, maybe an energy of crisis, maybe us feeling very emotionally charged, maybe us feeling like we got to call out some kind of injustice or something. But what I love about Thursday going into Friday is I love the moon conjoining Venus. Venus is at 29 degrees Leo, so we're wrapping up our Venus and Leo transit on Thursday. The moon's trining Chiron, which is very healing. It's a very, very healing energy. So we might have a moment of healing on Thursday with the moon trining Chiron. But what I love is the moon coming to conjunction with Venus. I think that so Venus goes into Virgo as the moon hits Virgo. Oh yeah, at the same time on Friday. Yeah. I'm looking at 12 p.m. Friday, September 19th. The moon and Venus go into Virgo together. And now we are in our second eclipse energy. Okay? So we had our lunar eclipse in Pisces. That was the sun and the moon opposite each. That was the sun in Virgo and the moon in Pisces opposite each other. But now that the sun and moon as of Friday, September 19th, are in the same sign. Now we're in our solar eclipse in Virgo energy. So this kind of puts us in this moment of, karmic unfolding and destiny and fate. And it's kind of feeling a little messy. It's feeling a little chaotic. The reason why things kind of take a turn towards chaos on Friday is because as Venus goes into Virgo, 0 degrees Virgo by 12 p.m. on Friday, September 19th, she immediately moves into a square with Uranus and Gemini. So that Venus Uranus square, our relationship life, our legal life, can when it comes to the law, when it comes to our relationships, when it comes to money and finances, there can be a little bit of a moment of instability. And there can be a little bit of a moment of, chaos, of maybe reckoning, of maybe emancipation or autonomy, or there could even be a moment of like something suddenly shifts or changes, or some kind of drama unfolds that puts us into crisis, possibly, okay? Because Venus square Uranus, Venus in Virgo, square Uranus and Gemini, okay? Someone's finding out that they're dating. Someone's either finding out that the person that they're dating is dating like two or three people or has like another life or something. Or, okay, if that's you and you're dating multiple people and talking to multiple people, well, guess what? Someone might end up finding out on that day, okay, Friday going into the weekend, that you are messing around and that you are playing the field, okay? And you're the goalie, you're front and center, you're playing defense, you're playing the field, you're doing too much, okay? But yeah, with Venus square Uranus, that's definitely going to be a little bit of a moment of chaos for our relationships, possibly. Venus, she goes going to her fall, and she immediately squares Uranus, and that's the signature that's going to be locked in for our solar eclipse in Virgo. The Venus Uranus square is rebellion. That's people walking out of work. Venus in Virgo, squaring Uranus and Gemini. That's people walking out of work. That's people protesting, the workplace over the weekend going into the eclipse. You know, um, yeah, and then the moon hits the south node on Saturday as Venus is at 1 degree squaring Uranus at 1 degree Gemini. And then we have Mercury in Libra, who's separating from an opposition with Neptune in Aries, right? So on Saturday, September 20th, Mercury's at 4 degrees of Libra, separating from the opposition with Neptune. And then we have Mars at 28, but he's getting to that 29th degree. He's getting to that 29 degrees, when we get these planets that are at like, when we start to get a lot of planets that are like at the end, last degrees, like 28, 29 degrees, in the beginning degrees of a sign, 0, 1 degrees, which is what we have right now. We have Neptune at 0, we have Uranus at 1, right? We have Saturn at 28. We're gonna have the sun at 28 degrees come the weekend. We have Mercury who just moved in. We have Mars at 28, right? We have all these. When we get these like last beginning degrees, like where planets are going to the last degrees and the beginning degrees of a sign, crisis, dramatic endings and dramatic beginnings, like culmination of things, events, climax. We get to the climax, right? We get to the top of the mountain and then right? And then we go downhill afterwards, right? So I just want you guys to keep this in mind. Things are kind of extreme, they're dramatic, they're intense. That's what this energy is giving. And even the energy of the weekend, that Mars at 28 degrees, just feels like there's something very dramatic. There's something very climactic as the moon goes into Virgo, as the moon is transiting Virgo, and we're going into our eclipse on Sunday. I'm gonna do a whole live on the solar eclipse in Virgo, by the way. I'll probably be doing that, if not on Friday, then maybe tomorrow, because I have a full schedule on Wednesday and Thursday, so I won't be able to do it Wednesday and Thursday. But yeah, so moon hitting Venus though tends to be pretty good, but it's that square to Uranus. So, you know, what I will say on Friday and Saturday, just you know if you're going to be out socializing and having fun and partying and things like this, or if you're going to be out in the town and stuff, just watch out for that moon Venus square Uranus. What there might be unexpected changes or shifts in the schedule. You might have run-ins with strangers, that can be very difficult, very hard. There could also be, you meet new. The good thing though is this could be about meeting new friends in like a new social circle. Moon Venus squaring Uranus on Friday going into Saturday. It's kind of giving we want something different from our relationships with Venus square Uranus. We're open to something different. We're open to something unique. We're willing to try something out that's different or unique, or we're even connecting to people that are different than, that are maybe exceptional in some type of way, or that they challenge, what the type of friends or the type of social networks we typically have in some type of way. Okay. So Saturday, the moon hits the south node. The moon hits the south node. When the sun hit the south node, we had the loss of a man, the loss of a prominent male figure, someone that's in the limelight, right? The moon hitting the south node, that can be the loss of a prominent woman in some type of way. Okay. Also, just be very aware when the moon, these note this nodal thing with the north node in Pisces, south node in Virgo, and the moon and the sun and the Venus all going through all in the same sign as the south node on Saturday and this weekend. And even going, I'll talk about this more at the eclipse. We got to watch out for getting sick or getting ill at this time. Moon South Node together is definitely people getting sick on this weekend from being outside, from partying, but also from weather changes in general. The weather is changing. The mutable signs, the mutable seasons are when the weather shifts and changes. And when we get weather changing, that's when we see an increase of bacteria and viruses and all those things. So you want to keep your immune system nice and boosted going into this eclipse on the weekend, especially Saturday with the moon at the south node. That can be a moment of illness or a moment of sickness. We also may feel very exhausted or very drained going into this weekend. And with the moon in the south node drains our energy, it takes our energy, right? So I just want you guys to be very aware of your energy levels. So if you feel very exhausted and drained over the weekend, and then you had plans to go out, but then you're like, oh my God, I just feel tired, and then everything just feels weird, or I feel sick, or I feel nauseous, or whatever. Be very aware of that energy with moon on the south node on Saturday, okay? So yeah. Then, and then, and then we have our eclipse on Sunday. The second one, Sun, Moon opposite Saturn. Venus, 2 degrees of Virgo, squaring Uranus and Gemini. Mercury at 5 degrees Leo, trining Uranus, trining Pluto. I just think that this weekend is dramatic and intense. And I think it's just a mixed bag of things. I think, there's people mourning and grieving, and there's a funeral on Sunday, right? Charlie Kirk's funeral. But then there's also people protesting and feeling very mad and very triggered, and we're walking out of jobs, and it's just like there's a lot going on. Okay. Someone said, since Memorial Day weekend, all five members of my house were sick. Yeah. Would you have a mutable moon? What's your moon sign in? What's your fourth house? Yeah, there's been a lot of sickness, a lot of illness and stuff. Also, I'm a little worried with pets. So if you have pets, if you have animals, I'm taking this one tomorrow to the vet because I got to get his medication and he's been having a recurring ear infection. So I got to figure that out, see what's going on. I've been giving him medication. I have like the fluid to drain out his ear and like to flush it out and everything, but it's not working. So I'm gonna have to. He might need like some antibiotics, or he might need something stronger, or they might have to do like a little flush of his ear or something. But watch out for animals getting sick or getting ill. Watch out for your animals eating things they shouldn't be eating. Watch out for your animals, running away this weekend, okay? And also elderly animals, my loves. I just got to be honest with you. This is a period where elderly animals are passing away. We are going to be seeing animals who are at the end of their life cycle and they are their life journey is over. Their life journey has come to completion. We are going to be seeing some animals passing with the South Node in Virgo, the solar eclipse in Virgo, the sign of pets opposing Saturn in Pisces. Someone said sometimes Shih Tzus need a food change. Poultry can definitely become an issue over time. Well, he doesn't eat chicken. Chicken is so bad for him. But I do give him turkey. He seems to respond well to turkey. He responds better to beef, but yeah, I'll take notice of that. I'll see if I'll just strictly feed him beef, and I'll see if that helps with the allergies because he's definitely having like some allergies. So yeah, so we just want to be very aware, very protective and on guard when it comes to our pets, when it comes to our health. Also, I just got to be honest with you guys. There's weird shit going on with people's jobs right now. Restructuring at the jobs, layoffs at the jobs. Bosses are hiding things and not being fully honest with us and telling us what's actually going on at the jobs. There's a lot of weird, funky stuff happening at people's work or people's jobs. So if that's you, if you're finding yourself in a funky place with your work or with your job or whatever, just pay attention, okay? Because there's just weird shit going on with people's jobs, and there's restructuring, and there's layoff. There's just weird stuff going on in people's jobs. So, okay, I want you guys to be aware of that, especially if you have Virgo Pisces. So, if you are a Libra rising or an Aries rising, if you have if Virgo Pisces is any way affecting your sixth house, 12th house, or even if you are a, hold on. If you're a Leo rising or an Aquarius rising, if you're a Libra rising or an Aries rising, these eclipses can affect your job, your income, your money. So Leo rising, Aquarius rising, Libra rising, and Aries rising. Just be careful, okay? Or be aware. Not be careful, but be aware. Pay attention to what's going on in the workplace right now, okay? Because you can end up getting hit by these eclipses in a way that leads to like the loss of a job or something. It's just in the air. It's just something that's happening. Um, because the reason why is because Leo and Aquarius has Virgo Pisces and the 11th house, 8th house access. And then Libra and Aries has the Virgo Pisces on the 6th house, 12th house access. So that's why Aries rising, Libra rising, Leo rising, and Aquarius rising, these eclipses are kind of rough because it's activating the 12th, 8th, 6th, and the second house access for you guys. And those are very delicate, sensitive houses. Those houses are a little tough. Okay. Those houses are a little tough. Those houses can be a little broke. Those houses can be where we get sick, where we get ill. Those houses can be about infection and disease and stuff. So if you are Libra rising, Aries rising, Aquarius rising, Leo rising, you need to watch out for these eclipses, okay? Because you can end up in the hospital, you can end up sick, you can end up with an infection, you can end up needing surgery, you can lose a job, you can have a money expense that comes out of nowhere where you got to pay for something that you weren't planning on paying for. Okay, your stream of income could get impacted negatively. So just warning you guys, just letting you know. Okay. But we will, so yeah, we wrap up on Sunday with our solar eclipse in Virgo, and it's eclipse day, you know. Don't go outside. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. We gotta live our life. We gotta do, we gotta live our life and do things as if, But yes, my loves, I just want to let y'all know, I want to know that we wrap up this week with a very climactic eclipse on Sunday. Mercury's going to be in Libra by this time. Venus has moved into Virgo at this time. We have a 29 degrees Mars, which is why I feel like this is very dramatic. Oh my God, look what someone said. My stepdad got suddenly sick and just got surgery yesterday to get his gallbladder removed. Well, that is Virgo, the South Node in Virgo, Mercury in the sun there. He's a Leo rising. Wow. Look at me. Listen, I'll be on it. Leo rising in the eighth house. They have Pisces where we had an eclipse. Virgo rules what? The pancreas and the gallbladder. So Virgo rules the pancreas, the gallbladder, the lower part of the stomach, and the upper intestine. So you'll see a lot of Leos because they have Virgo in the second house because they don't eat right. Leo rising doesn't eat right. They end up having pancreatic issues, pancreatic enzyme issues. They end up having get to needing to get their gallbladder removed or they need to have their appendix removed. My dad actually had their appendix removed because the appendix is also ruled by Virgo. And he's my dad's a Leo, but he's got Virgo placements. That's what that is. So no lies. I had a reading with Louis right before the eclipse. Aries rising affecting my sixth house. My household got sick, including my dogs. I've also been sidestepped twice while sides. Oh wow, yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. Eighth house surgery. Eighth house rules surgery, by the way. I don't know if you guys knew that, but for those of you that are learning astrology, the eighth house, if you're ever looking to any kind of surgery or anything where you're getting cut into, which surgeries are a near-death experience many times because the eighth house, right? You're being put under. Well, that's an eighth house thing. Surgeries are an eighth house thing. Permanent transformation to the body, eighth house, right? So, yeah. But yeah, we'll talk more about the eclipse on Friday. We're gonna do a whole live on the solar eclipse in Virgo. You guys have a beautiful week, a fun, safe week to the best of your abilities. Final thoughts about this week, okay? A lot of angry people around. Watch out with projecting your anger, your rage, or fighting. If you want to do that, be prepared for the consequences of fighting and arguing, okay? Be really careful. There's a lot of hidden enemies around. I don't know how else to say that. There's a lot of like it's weird. This is a weird time because there's a lot of kind of like we don't know who's the enemy and who's not the enemy. It's like it's weird. It's like there's people spying on each other and there's people reporting each other to like, I don't know, it's just a really weird time. So I think, in my opinion, I think this is a good time for privacy. I think this is a good time to be careful with what you get involved or entangled with because it could come with dire consequences that can affect your livelihood. Okay. It's eclipse season, right? Where people get exalted and thrown up and people get thrown down and cast aside, right? That's what the eclipses do. The eclipses are kind of like a roulette wheel. You get thrown in the roulette wheel and we're gonna see where we get spit out, where we end up, right? So that, okay, be aware of wounded men this week. Wounded men, men that have an anger problem, men that are pissed off, men that are triggered because of Mars opposing Chiron. Okay, Mars opposing Chiron. So be aware of that. Also, Sun Mercury opposing Saturn. We may feel heavy. We may feel sad. We may feel depressed. We may feel negative. We may feel pessimistic. We may feel doubtful. We may feel fearful. There may be fear that comes up for us. There may be pessimism, doubt, insecurity. As the Sun and Mercury going into Sunday, move into an opposition with Saturn. Okay. Well, actually, Thursday. No, Thursday, Sun, Mercury opposing. Or was it Wednesday that I was saying? Hold on, let me go back. Hold on. Let me do a little. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Oh yeah, it's starting Wednesday. Wednesday, when the moon goes into Leo this week, that's when things get a little tense. That's when things get a little rough. I think we got to enjoy today and tomorrow to the best of our ability with the moon in Cancer. But it feels like Wednesday Mercury opposes Saturn. Mars opposes Chiron. That opposition goes exact. The moon going into Leo on Wednesday opposes Pluto and Aquarius. It feels like Wednesday is a very triggering day. We just want to be very aware of Sun, Mercury, and eventually Moon as it goes into Virgo for our eclipse in the weekend, opposing Saturn and Pisces. Because I'm going to tell you something. This eclipse coming up, and even the 2 weeks after, because Saturn's at 28 degrees Pisces, and this is the end of Saturn and Pisces transit, right? Like Saturn is wrapping up his work in Pisces, and then he's going to go into Aries next year, where he's going to spend the next 2 years going into like 2027. But there's narratives, stories, karmic contracts, karmic responsibilities, obligations, burdens that we've been carrying that are coming to an end. This can look like the releasing of a karmic contract with a friend or with a partner or with a spouse. This can look like, a sudden change in career direction where you've been working at this place for X amount of years and you leave, right? Sun, Mercury opposing Saturn, eventually Sun, Moon opposing Saturn for our eclipse, right? There can be some kind of hard stops, some kind of losses, some kind of endings that we have to experience, that we have to endure, that are meant to pave the way to change to our new timeline. But we just got to confront some of that stuff. We may see some of that stuff actually happen this week, next week, right? Because of this opposition to Saturn in Pisces, and Saturn's at 28 degrees. And he's finishing his work in Pisces, right? And so I just want you guys to understand, be discerning with what you're holding on to, and be even more discerning of what you're letting go of during this time. Okay. You got to trust your heart, trust your spirit, trust what your intuition is telling you about, where you should be going, what you should be moving towards, right? Like if it feels good, if it brings you joy, if it brings it growth and expansion in your life, if it makes you feel passionate and inspired and all those things, move towards it. Okay. If it drains you, if it exhausts you, if it frustrates you, if it makes you sad, if it makes you feel conflicted or confused, if it makes you feel at war with yourself, you got to move away from it. You got to figure out, how can you start cutting the cord? How can you start letting the shit go? Okay. The heart will never let you down, right? Your heart will never let you down if you follow your heart, right? Follow your sun, do your sun. You'll never be let down. So I just want you guys to understand this, okay? This is a big period of endings for a lot of people, right? This is Saturn going through the last sign of the zodiac. The nodes are going through Pisces and Virgo, which Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, right? We have the North Node there. And we have all these planets at these last degrees and beginning degrees of new signs, right? So we just need to honor the fact that we are in this very dramatic domino effect type of period right now, where there's a lot of things ending simultaneously. And I think that's the overwhelm about it. Like that's one of the downs that I was getting actually, is like multiple simultaneous things ending at that, like where there's like a grand coalition of simultaneous events, that where there's like larger time cycles but also smaller time cycles that indicate endings, it's like we have 100-year cycles ending. We have 500-year cycles ending. We have a 2,000-year cycle ending. We have a 2 week cycle ending. We have a 7-year cycle ending. We have a 14-year cycle ending. We have a 30-year cycle ending and beginning. So we have all these different cycles that run on their own unique timelines, but they all are ending at the same time. And we see this with the planets, right? We have Neptune, Saturn, and Uranus leaving a sign and entering a new sign all at the same time, right? And they're all on their own different time cycles. So what we're seeing is kind of like the collapsing of cycles ending and beginning right now. In multiple cycles, some that are really big and long and large, and many that are really small, like are also all ending at the same time. And we just got to honor that. That's where we're at right now. That's where we're at right now, my loves. Okay. So, yeah, and it's all happening all at once. It's like a domino effect, it's kind of crazy. But I just want you guys to keep that in mind. It's like we have these larger cycles that are ending, and we also have these smaller cycles that are ending. And there's like an overlap, right? And generally we don't see that. We don't see that too often. We don't usually, change is a more of a tiered thing, or usually cycles end with a little bit of like overlap, so it's not so dramatic and so intense. But like everything ending and everything beginning all at once, it's like a lot. It's like overwhelming. It's too much. And that's just where we're at right now. We gotta honor that. We gotta accept that. Like this is the work that we're being called to do, right? And we all chose to be here at this time. So I don't know what you believe when it comes to, reincarnation and the soul or whatever you believe, right? But I'm a firm believer that we all chose to be here at this time. We all chose to incarnate and be here present on this planet for this change because why? The divine spirit, God knew that we have the tools, we have the wisdom, we have the knowledge, we have the heart and the spirit to be able to navigate these times, right? There's a reason why we chose to come back during this particular time period because we have the tools. We are prepared. We know how to navigate these times, right? We may not know that we know, but we do. We just got to trust ourselves. We got to lean into our intuition. We got to lean into our heart, got to lean into faith and optimism. And just Pisces, North Node in Pisces, Saturn in Pisces, this is the time where you got to be faithful. You got to stay positive as much as you can, right? Not false positivity, but optimistic positivity. Hope. Hope goes a long way, right? Hope gives us something to reach for, something to aspire for. Hope redeems us. Hope gives us a sense of direction. It also gives us a vision of what is possible. These are all things that hope does, right? And we can be so quick to abandon hope in moments of crisis like this, but we can't. In moments like this is when we go extra hard being hopeful, right? Is when we lean in to hope, right? Yeah, and a miracle could happen any day. That's so true. You know what I mean? My Pisces rising self, ninth house stellium, reminding you guys to stay hopeful and to stay positive and, to we don't want to spiritually bypass. We don't want any false positivity, but we need to be strong bastions of joy and of unconditional love and of hope because we are living in a world that's very dark and very shadowy right now and there's a lot of confusion around what is right and what is wrong, right? And it's like people are delusional. People's beliefs and their morals are delusional right now. We have Christians and Catholics, okay, that have no relationship with God or spirit or the divine. And we can see that in their beliefs because they're not doing anything Jesus told them to do. Nothing. Totally out of alignment with their morals and and ethics and with what is right and what is wrong. We have people trying to legitimize and trying to make good racism and bigotry and sexism, right? It's insane. It's insanity. It is. So we need to be discerning, right? We need to be the ones that we have to know ourselves so well that we can call out and identify evil even when it wants to pretend that it's good, because that's what evil does. Evil tries to feign goodness. Evil parades and pretends that it is good when it's not. We got to be able to see it, right? That's one of the big things with the way evil works. Evil is a deceptive energy. Evil likes to hide in the shadows. Evil does not want to be seen. Evil likes to pretend. Evil likes to lie. Evil likes to deceive. Evil likes confusion. Evil thrives in confusion, right? So we just got to know ourselves so well. We got to be very grounded within our beliefs and our morals and our ethics. We can't let people deceive us and trick us into believing that we're bad people because we're staying true to our morals and our ethics and what we know is right within ourselves, right? So it's a very delicate, sensitive time. It's a very weird time. And I think right now we just got to be the moral bastions. We got to be the ones that are very clear and that are leaders for others and kind of showing other people like, hey, this is the way that we should approach a situation. This is the way that we should navigate these times. This is how, we can, or even how we persevere through times like this, right? So. Yeah, someone said so many lost at this time. Yeah, it's a lot of people drinking the Kool-Aid. But it just, you know what, this is what happens when you live when you build a country that is based off of ego. You see what I'm saying? Like this country is very egotistical and very narcissistic. And this country, right, has a history of abusing people of very, very strong imbalances of power, right? If we go and look at the United States. But Western society and capitalistic culture in the United States, this is what happens when you build a society of narcissists and everyone's egotistical and everyone is selfish. We lose compassion and care for our neighbor, for the stranger, for those that are different than us, right? And we get very prideful and very arrogant around our collective identity. This is why it's like, the price of admission when it comes to being an American, right, is having this is what they want us to believe. The price of admission to becoming an American is abandoning everything that you knew before. You got to abandon your ethnicity. You got to abandon your culture. You got to abandon the languages that you spoke before you came here to this country, right? They expect us to abandon ourselves. And even then, they still won't give us a seat at the table. And that's what many people of color or even LGBT people that are on the extreme conservative right, right, even women that are on the extreme conservative right, right? They're they eventually they will see they do not have a seat at the table either. They're not gonna have a seat at the table. Eventually, there's gonna be a day where they realize, oh damn, that's a ceiling I couldn't break. Why? Because you're a woman, because you're a person of color, because you're an LGBT person, because you're Latino. I don't care what your name is. I don't care if you change your last name from Estrada to, from Estrada to Thompson or something, right? They don't care. We live in a society, we live in a culture, especially here in the States, that is built off of white nationalistic pride. White pride. White is right and nothing else, right? That's the culture. That's the society. And it never went away. That never went away. It was there since the inception of this country. Okay? Women just got the right to vote 100 years ago. Okay. People of color got the right to vote what? 60 years ago. 70 years, was it 60 years ago? Come on. Come on, guys. Catch up. We're forgetting who this country is. We're forgetting where we come from. We're forgetting what the foundation of this country is. Come on. We got to remember, you guys. We got to remember. Okay. So do not abandon yourself is my message. Do not abandon your cultures. Do not abandon where you came from. Don't do self-abandonment right now. The price of that is very high. Okay, you got to fight for yourself. You got to advocate for yourself. You got to know who you are, right? Jupiter's in Cancer. We got to reach to our ancestry. We got to reach to our past. We got to reach to our family. We got to know who we are right now. We can't get confused by this whole political thing. You know what I mean? So, this whole political dialogue and this political extremism that's become the narrative here in the States, especially if you're an American, especially if you're in the States. They want us to abandon ourselves. They want us to forget who we are, and we can't, you know? Yeah, to decolonial. Yeah, a lot of us, Marissa said, yes, I've been wanting to reconnect with my culture to decolonialize myself. Yeah, me too. Me too. I've really been, I feel like I've done a lot of that work when I was in college, but I definitely feel like there's more work to do, you know? Yeah, people, and we got to be compassionate with people that are just confused right now. It's not their fault. I think a lot of people they're just drinking the Kool-Aid and they don't really understand, the complexity of identity politics and race and gender and how we live in a country right now. We have this political system that is really taking advantage and using identity politics to divide us and keep us at war with one another. People don't have context, and it's not their fault. Why? Because we have a shitty education system. No wonder the United States, we got a nation full of dummies. I hate to say I love this country, but man, our education system has failed all of us, and we're seeing it now with, the political outcomes. We're seeing what happens when you have a populace that is hyper emotional and that is not objective and lacks education and lacks awareness around how politics work. Well, you get people like Trump in office. That's what happens right? So. I'm just hoping that all we can do is do our best to wake up other people, to educate people, not engaging in arguments and fights, but doing our best to engage in conversation, to share the information and what we know, and to try to bring out the humanity of people. I think we are in such a narcissistic, selfish time where we have a fucking raging narc as a president, and people are celebrating him because we live in a narcissistic country. I hate to say it, my loves, but this is why the majority of your bosses, the CEOs, the VP, the people at the top, the VIPs, they're all narcs. All of them, all narcs. Because we live in a society right now that praises narcissism, that celebrates it, that exalts, oh, you're a narcissist, oh, you're selfish, oh, you don't give a fuck about anybody else, and you're just willing to take advantage of everybody else and use everybody else for your own self-betterment. Well, we're worshiping those people right now. Look at the fucking billionaires. Come on, guys. Look all around us. Look at the leaders. Look at the billionaires. Look at our president. I mean, come on. We are worshiping narcissists right now. And what happens when we have a country that celebrates narcissism, well, it forgets everyone else. No one else is important. The family structure isn't important anymore. The kids are no longer important anymore. Community is no longer, these are all moon things. Family, our children, the community, these are all the moon. They don't give a shit about the moon anymore. All they care about is the sun, right? We're a culture disconnected from the moon. Makes a lot of sense because the United States has an Aquarius moon. So we're a culture, a people that are all different, right? Moon in Aquarius. The United States has the moon in Aquarius. We have all these pockets of people that are different. We got little India, and then we got little Korea. We got Chinatown. We got little Armenia. We have all the Asians are living over here, and all the Mexicans are living over here, and all the whites are living over here. Aquarius moon. There's none of this cohesion with the United States populace because the United States has an Aquarius moon. We're a nation full of strangers. Half of you don't even know who the fuck your neighbors are. You don't even know who lives next door to you. You don't know who lives above you or below you. You don't even know. Aquarius moon. The United States has an Aquarius moon. A nation full of strangers. Can you believe it? And they take advantage of that. They know this. The powers that be know this, which is why they take advantage of us. And they put us all against each other. It's always you blame the gays and you blame the immigrants and then you blame the Mexicans and then you blame the women and then you blame the people of color and then there's always someone to blame. There's always someone that they're going to be scapegoating and someone that they're going to blame. And they're always going to target the smallest populations first because the smallest populations don't have advocacy, right? They don't have representation, right? This is why they're going for trans people because trans people are 0.0001%. Right? Don't quote me on that, but I'm being dramatic. But like who's going to protect the trans folk? Right? There's not that many of them, so it's easy to target that population. Because the smaller the population, the more vulnerable it is. It's easy to go after immigrants. Why is it easy to go after immigrants? Because they have no political advocacy. They have no representation. They can't even vote. Yet they pay taxes, yet they work, but they don't have a voice. Immigrants don't have a voice. They don't have anybody politically advocating for them, they don't have representation. So it's easy to scapegoat the immigrants, right? Because they don't have a face. They're a faceless population, right? They prey on the weak. That's a tactic of evil. Prey on the weak. You go after the weak ones. You go after the ones that are most vulnerable. You go after the ones that have the least representation politically, that have the least resources, that have the least money, the least agency. You target them first, and then you work your way out. That's their strategy. These my loves. This is time and time again. They do this. Leaders, despotic leaders do this time and time again. It's a recipe. It's a playbook. Go read. I didn't read it, but the Project 25 playbook, divide and conquer. It's yeah, time and time again. It's the same shit. We should know this by now. We should be woke by now. Why are we letting this all happen again? It's just crazy to me. It's crazy, but oh well. It is what it is. We shall persevere. We shall overcome. And we chose to be here, my loves. We chose to be here. And we have to believe that we have all the tools necessary. We have the wisdom, we have the knowledge, we have the community, we have the connection, we have the ability to overcome whatever challenges, the shadows want to throw at us, right? But I love you all so much. Thank you guys for coming, attending my TED Talk for the last few minutes. And pray. This is a time of prayer. It's a time of meditation. It's a time of sending out good energy, sending out good intentions, right? You want to be as high vibrational as possible during this time because the collective vibration is very low right now, and we need to like raise it. So, praying, staying faithful, all these things where you raise the collective vibration, do that right now. Okay. I love you all so much. Have a beautiful, blessed day. Take care of yourselves. Be well. The moon's in Cancer. Go take a good nap today. Treat yourself to some good food. Listen to some music. Do some domestic activities. If you want to clean your house today, tomorrow with the moon in Cancer, definitely do that. Okay. But I love you all. Take care. You guys be well. I'm gonna go ahead and post this on Instagram or on Facebook. Facebook. My goodness. I'm gonna go post this on YouTube in a couple hours as well. But I'm gonna post it right away right now on Instagram. So, all right, my loves. I'll see you guys. Take care. All right, bye.